Okay, we got a big night tonight. I think this could be probably one of our hottest lineups we've had in a very long time. So we want to get right to it. Thank everybody for coming. This is our last event of 6 this year. I don't know about you guys, but election season is, I'm about done. On that, again, with 6 events, you can kind of do the math of how much money this has cost us this year. So please, if you haven't joined and you're enjoying your food and beverages and everything, please join. Hit Carol over there, or either on the way or just quietly when you need to stretch your legs, but please join. Also, please tag everybody in the room on Facebook. We are live streaming, and the streaming is working exceptionally well. It's hometownkeyWest.com. You also see this is being filmed by one of the panelists coming up later to be used against us ad nauseum. So let's go right to introductions. I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves first, and then we will have our first, we'll have the utility board candidates introduce themselves. But if you would, Nan, start off.
I'm Nancy Klingener with WLRN News.
Naja Gerard with the Blue Paper.
Larry Kahn, editor of the Keynoter.
Kay Harris, editor of the Key West Citizen.
And as we slow down a little bit, so everybody knows, we ask these panelists to come up, and they ask the questions completely on their own. So Hometown has nothing to do. Sometimes we'll pass suggestions to them, but this is their opinion, and it helps Hometown remain neutral and keep an even keel on everything. For the candidates, and this will be throughout the night, we're going to have them do a very quick introduction, 15 seconds, of who they are, what they're running for, and then we'll get right into the questions. Then we'll do a 90-second closing statement. Again, we're going to try to keep this really tight because I don't want to run too far over, but all of these races are very important, so we want to give adequate time to everything. With that, Carol, would you start?
Hello. Hi, and thank you, Todd and Hometown. I'm Carol Schreck, and I'm running for the Utility Board of Key West. I'm running because we need to protect our reliability, our environment, and our independence from Florida Power and Light. Yay, solar.
Hello, I'm Tim Rutt. I have been on the board for the past cycle, and I am running for the same things. I think we're pretty much in agreement: reliability and a greener place for Key West.
We're going to start off with Nan. If you haven't been here before, what we'll do is for this first panel, Nan will start, and then we'll go down and go through as much as we can. For the second one, Naja will start, then the next one, Larry. That way we just kind of keep changing it up. So Nan, kick us off.
This question is for both of you. Could you tell us your position on Amendment 1, the utility-backed provision that would require people with solar energy to contribute to the upkeep of the grid?
Carol, go ahead.
All right. Amendment 1, it's a long answer, but I will try to keep it short. It's very misleading, and my position on it is no. It's a definite no from the standpoint of, there are two, if you follow the money, you can find very quickly that who supports this is the big power, whether it's Florida Power and Light, Duke, Tampa, and there's a reason for that. There's 2 sentences to the amendment. The first one seems relatively harmless. It's consumers have the right to own or lease solar equipment installed on their property to generate electricity for their own use. We already have that right. So if the amendment stopped there, then it would be a yes. But it goes on further. That's what I sort of call the foreplay of, if you will, of what comes next.
Carol, let's keep it clean.
It's how we court into it. Basically what they're trying to do is it's an opportunity for the state and the governments to be able to put a tax or a fee onto those people that want to use solar. The analogy that was brought up to me was sort of like a hybrid car versus a non-hybrid car. You have both going to the gas station and both are going to buy their fuel, but the suppliers of the fuel, as well as the distributors, they want to make sure that you use the fuel. Those people that are in the hybrid are not going to use as much. And so what they want to do or have the ability to do, and that's what the second part of the amendment would say, is that they have the ability to put a surcharge so that, surcharge.
My fault. Well, thank you, Carol. I'm sure Tim will do the rest. Also, another thing, just the beginning here. Keep an eye on Richard here. He's going to tell you when you have 30 seconds and when you're done.
All right. Well,
Finish your breath.
Thank you. Thank
Well,
you. So the bottom line is Florida Power and Light is an investor-owned utility. It's about money for them and not power for the people. That's the bottom line. That's why we vote no.
thank you.
I agree, you have to vote no, and for the same reason. Public power in the state of Florida is a great thing, and the way that FPL and everyone would do it with the taxes, it's basically, if they do put a tax to the state's going to run it through FP&L and all the big companies, and everyone please vote no.
Thank you. Margaret?
This is for Tim Root. According to electricitylocal.com, the cost of electricity in a home in the Lower Keys is more than 20% higher than the state average. And just up the Highway Marathon, it's 1.84% less than the state average. So what's going on? Why can't Keys Energy provide us with electricity in par with those numbers?
Well, the biggest thing is our infrastructure. I mean, we all live on an island, and believe it or not, when you look through, do fact checking, the Keys have some of the lowest electric rates of any island community in the United States. And that's our big problem, because 70% of our infrastructure is over salt water, and it is a great problem to do that. But if you notice over the last 4 or 5 years, actually back the whole way to 2009, rates have gone down from what we were. We were at the top 1 to 5 out of the municipalities, and now we're at 15 or 18, and we are trying to get that power down. But it's big infrastructure costs because of the salt water.
If I could just follow up, but Marathon's not all that far away, and they're also an island surrounded by salt water.
Yeah, but Marathon is only a little bit less because they are in the co-op, and it's just a little bit less further down the line than we are, and we actually share the cost of Florida Keys Co-op. We share the cost of those, and then we have to do our infrastructure also, and that's where that couple percentage points makes a big difference.
Larry?
Good to see you guys again. I asked you this last time. The board and the people who vote for the board, it's restricted to Key West city limits. To expand on what we spoke last time, you both indicated you'd be in favor. What actual efforts would you take to possibly expand it to all the lower Keys in terms of lobbying or state representatives or anything like that?
Go ahead, girl.
I'll take this. Well, I want to commend Chairman Batty for bringing this forward on November 2nd for all you out there. There will be a workshop on the board structure moving forward. It's at 3 o'clock at the James Street building. I think it's a terrific idea. I think it's time. From what I understand, the committee that has come up with a recommendation that is going to suggest that the board remain at 5, which is what it currently is. 3 will be Key West. 2 will ultimately be Lower Keys. Their recommendation is that the candidates and the board members sit in those districts or those areas. One thing I've heard that I think I would disagree about is that I'm a strong proponent of at-large voting. And my understanding is that they're going to suggest that those people in Lower Keys vote for Lower Keys and those people for Key West vote in Key West. I think it's important that we have representation. There are no boundaries to some of the issues that we have to deal with. The whole issue of not in my backyard doesn't belong in energy. Thank you.
Yeah, along the same lines, the Sunshine Law does not allow Mr. Batty and I to talk, but I am in total agreement with the committee that they've set up. I think it's a time has come that we need to have everybody represented on our board. There are quite a few hurdles that we need to get over. In the 70s, the state of Florida actually put a law together that created this voting, and this was because the city of Key West is almost like a franchise holder of this utility.
And that's kind of why I asked the lobby.
Yeah. Right, and the hardest part is going to get through the state, and it's going to take Florida Municipal Power, American Public Power Association, and all their people to get together and get around this, and it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take a while. But I think it's the best thing, because everyone that pays the bill should be represented.
And I hope Holly and Dan heard that.
This question is for both of you. You have both been vocal supporters of solar energy. How would you incorporate that into what Keys Energy is doing now and accommodate the added expense of solar energy without trying to drive up our bills? How do you make our bills go down, but incorporate that expensive technology?
Why don't you start on this one, Tim?
Okay. Yeah, when I first got on the board last year, my biggest platform was greener energy and reliability. And boy, did we get an education quick. Solar power is a great thing, but the only way to use it is to get it near your infrastructure. And when you get it near your infrastructure, it's near your generation plants. And December 7th, we have a workshop that is put on by Florida Municipal Power for all the local municipal utilities. And we are talking about, instead of sending large solar arrays in Key West, where our coal fire and our gas plants are, we need to put the solar arrays there. So the infrastructure, which costs millions of dollars, that I'm very familiar with, you cannot put down here and then expect to get any gain from it. So we have the infrastructure in place. You put the solar arrays near the generation. When the sun's out, we generate with solar power, and when we don't, we use up our gas and coal fire plants until they're outdated, and hopefully by then we'll have a way to store the electricity in the new saltwater batteries that are coming online now.
I would take a look at it from a micro and a macro situation. Macro is certainly for any kind of generation on the mainland and coming down. We need to work on that. We need to work on it legislatively. We need to work on some of the incentives to make it more affordable, because quite frankly, it is affordable in other states, just not in Florida. And there's reasons why. And we can look at big power for that too. There's no incentive for them to do it. From a micro standpoint, I would love to see, and I would love to work with the city with this, and in the county too for the lower keys, let's start bringing solar into our homes. Hark now allows solar in Key West in the historic district. Let's also bring in solar to our swimming pools. And we can each do something from that standpoint. When we build new pools, let's bring in solar. So I think there's two different ways we can take a look at it. One is macro and micro legislatively, and working with the associations. A diversified energy portfolio is like a diversified investment portfolio, and that's what brings the price down. Thank you.
Yeah.
Under normal conditions, we're not generating our own power here in the Keys, and we watch our energy bills fluctuate with the fuel adjustment charge. If the utility's job is to provide power to its customers at the lowest cost possible, what's the board's role in that? And would you change anything about how Keys Energy acquires power?
Carol, go first.
I'm trying to think of the question here for a second. For me, actually, reliability, we're talking about rates quite a bit, the lowest possible. It's really the lowest reasonably possible. We're at the end of the line, and what we really need to ensure for all of us is that we've got stable rates. And so that's not always the lowest. We want to be on the low end of things, but it's not always going to be the lowest, just like we don't always have the lowest fuel and some of the other things. What we do for that and from a policy standpoint is, and one of the things that does exist is there's a reserve. And the reserve helps take care of some of the different fluctuations as they come and go. That's important to maintain. I think for the rest of it, it really is about maintaining the stable rate and doing what we can from a policy standpoint, including the solar, including renewable energies, including a diversified portfolio. And that's going to ensure that we have a more reliable and steady rate.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, the biggest reason that we don't generate our own power down here, we have enough to keep us going when we have hurricanes and we get cut off from the mainland, but the use of the power down here using diesel and the fuels that we use is very, very expensive. So we only use that in dire situations, and actually, we have actually sold our generation to Florida Municipal Power Association, and they actually, when the hurricanes come through, have to turn on the generators down here so that people can use more of the power up there. But by getting power from our generation plants there keeps our costs down, and the fluctuations are caused a lot by weather.
Nadja?
Yes, for both of you, just an idea here. Underwater ocean turbines have been in operation since 2003, and we're right next to one of the biggest sources of energy on the planet, the Gulf Stream, which flows at 3 to 4 knots average every day, 365 days a year. Can't we find a way to, get out there, drop a turbine, and begin harnessing that energy?
Tim, you start. Alternate back.
I'm sure you've read in the paper a couple weeks ago, the Florida Keys Community College and Walter Schertenberger have been working on this technology that we're talking about now. Walter and I are good friends. We've gone over it. Some of the major problems are making sure that the turtles don't get squished in them, making sure the fish doesn't get in it. But the idea is coming, and we are at the front and at FKCC, and we are getting funding to do this. I think it's a great idea. And it's something that's coming in the future, but we still have a lot of hurdles and a lot of technology to get through to get it right and appropriate and make it productive.
One of my original platforms was to ensure or to actually have an energy plan. Keys Energy does not have an energy plan in terms of how we want to move forward. And part of that is taking a look at all the renewables, wind, turbine, and of course solar. And they each have their positives and they have some negatives right now. Each has a different element and different evolution to its technology. One of the things that we can't have is we can't be the testing ground and have our ratepayers pay for all the tests. Now, if a university wants to come or with a community college, that's all great. The last time that turbines were tried, there was an environmental issue. That may have changed, there may be new technology, but we need to take a look at what's right for Key West and the Lower Keys. People bring up wind. Well, I don't know where we would put our wind farm. We're certainly not going to put it in the National Marine Sanctuary. So these are some of the considerations, and this is what this board needs to do, is needs to take a look at the plan and what we really need to do, for the future.
Larry.
Well, Nadja took my question. I guess for Carol, should there be term limits for the board?
I generally do like term limits, yes. So I guess my default answer would be yes. I haven't given a lot of thought because I'm just trying to get there first. But in general, I would say there should be term limits.
Thank you. Okay.
Tim, this question's for you. What do you think the purpose of the board is? Why do you think it's important?
Well, the board is like a board of directors. I mean, you're running the company. I mean, if you do beat me, you actually get to sign a paper where you sign the checks, and everybody takes turns signing checks. But the big thing is the financial and fiscal responsibility of a $77 million company, and to keep it and running fit and trim and keeping costs down, and that's very important. And the other side is it gives me a benefit being in the construction industry. As long as I have an infrastructure, I have loved it on the board. It's a great challenge. I've, advised our construction management team, and we've done some great things over the last 3 years to bring stuff in on time and on budget. And that's what we do. And we should all be there. You just don't come on Thursdays and vote. You got to be out at the meetings and go to the sites and visit and make sure everybody's doing their job correctly. And on our budget analysis every year, we got to make sure our department heads are putting their numbers right and not polishing them up so they get clear through. I mean, that's for our upper staff to do, and that's very important, and that's what we do.
Right, Tim, since we're kind of doing it already, we're going to do our closing statements, 90 seconds to bring it home. Yes. Well, no, we just...
Well, thank you. Yeah, like I said, on the board, this is a board, and we run a very big company, and when you look at $77 to $87 million a year, they say that's an awful big price tag. Well, $45 million of that money goes straight to electric generation. The other is what runs and maintains our system, the rest of that money. And we have to be fiscally responsible to make sure that does the right thing. And my term on the board has been to do that with budgets, but my big thing is the infrastructure. We have infrastructure over saltwater, and it is in constant need of maintenance and repair. And we've come up with better ways to put unit price bidding out, to get better requests for proposals, training our construction managers as an advisor to make sure that we get the right quality construction and that we get it done on time and on budget. And I always toot my horn. We did a $6 million project for the Florida Keys Energy Service Building, and everyone said it couldn't be done, but we did it with no change orders, on budget, and 1.5 months ahead of schedule. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Tim. Carol?
Hardening our home is important, but we need to take a look at the challenges and the struggles that are threatening us beyond that. Since its inception in 1943, City Electric, now Keys Energy, has gone through 5 major transitions: formation, extending service into the lower Keys, establishment of a separate governance from the city, connection to the mainland and through the new transmission line, and most recently the name changed of Keys Energy. 53 days from November 8th, Election Day, it will be 2017, and change is once again at our door. We need to either open the door and embrace it, or we need to shut it and put a double lock on it. On a local level, critical positions in the field, the senior management staff, and yes, the board structure itself will be undergoing change. On a state and federal level, we need to be ready for legislative acts that establish the broader policy on how we power, incentives to do so, grid and infrastructure security, and most importantly, who has the deciding influence on those acts. And to this audience in particular, please, with the folks that are running for state representative, whether it's Ana Terez or Debbie, with Joe Garcia and Carlos, or whether it's Holly and Dan, please let them know that you expect them to have energy in their minds and in their eyesight, because things are changing at that level that we need their help.
Finish up, Kurt.
So we need someone here in town on this board that has the education, skill set, judgment, and fortitude to open the door and embrace the change, to defend our rates and reliability, our environment, and our independence from big power. If you want a voice, vote Schreck, and please tell your friends to do the same.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Tim. Our utility board candidate. So we get the Mosquito Control Board District 3 candidates to come on up. Brandon and Steve.
Najee, you'll be the first one.
While they're coming up, keep those Facebook posts coming and hope everybody's streaming. The streaming is made available by FloridaKeys.com and our lovely Kelly here. Let's see, the camera Kelly, as opposed to the audio Kelly we'll get to in just a minute. I was a little discombobulated earlier because I saw Gwen Filoso over there to the side. I saw a little sticker today at Bad Boy Burrito. It said, "All the news I get from Gwen Filoso." It disturbed me deeply. Moving along. Brandon, would you introduce yourself quickly?
Good evening, I'm Brandon Pinder from Mosquito Control Board District 3. I have 7 years in IT, information technology, hospitality background. I'm running for transparency, fiscal responsibility, and the concern of health and safety and economic well-being of our community.
Thank you, Brandon. Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Smith. I've had the pleasure of serving this community for 20 years as your District 3 Mosquito Commissioner. I came on board when they had basically no mosquito control program. We're now considered the best program in the nation, if not in the world. It's been fun, it's been great to add new innovative things, and it's been super seeing how we have really taken hold of this community and made it so most of you can say right now that you don't have a mosquito problem.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Nadja.
This is for both of you. Do you support the 30 or so local doctors and others who are asking for specimens of the GM mosquitoes so that they can see what type of bacteria is on those mosquitoes, and some of the other protocols that those doctors are asking for? And if the board decides to move forward with the GM release, would you push for some contract negotiations that might include those things?
Steve, why don't you take it first?
Okay, sure. I have been involved in the GM Mosquito Project since its inception, and actually met Dr. Nimmo a couple years before we seriously were talking about doing a trial here. I think it's good science. I am not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not an entomologist. I do believe that if there are concerns in the community, we do need to listen to them. I believe everyone has a right to bring their concerns forward. And if a group of doctors ask for something to be explained to them, I am not one who should be able to say no, they don't have the right to ask that question. As we move forward with this process for the genetic mosquitoes, it will be a tool. It's not a fix-all. We're not going to open up a box on March 31st and kill every Aedes aegypti in the lower Keys. This will be an ongoing project. So when we do, if we do this and it becomes licensed for commercial use, and it is not licensed for commercial, the trial is a very small trial, then once it's licensed for commercial use, we can look at it again, and if we use it, it will be an ongoing tool in our toolbox, and we don't have a lot of new tools, so I'm glad that something is there we can look at.
Brandon.
Yes, I believe absolutely that if the doctors and locals are requesting this information be provided, that we should provide this to them. But with the approval from the FDA, as Steve said, it is not commercially approved. The FDA has only approved specifically the trial in Key Haven. So if these genetically engineered mosquitoes were to go anywhere else in the United States, they would need to go back to the FDA in order to get approval for that transport. So that has not been done at this point in time, and that will need to be done prior to those mosquitoes being able to be taken to a lab to be tested for bacteria.
Thank you, Brandon. Larry.
The State Agriculture Department last week okayed the release of mosquitoes born with the Wolbachia virus, and I believe that would be on Stock Island and somewhere in Key Largo. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a special meeting this Friday to address that? Pretty sure. How would you vote on the Wolbachia? Because now the state and the feds have both okayed that release.
You want me to start? Sure. I'm totally in favor of it. It has been tried in other areas of the United States, so there's certainly no reason not to try it here. Again, it is a tool. We don't have a lot of tools, available, and we slowly are seeing our local domestic household mosquito becoming resistant to the very few pesticides we can use. So I think a trial is great. We need to look at every possible thing we can do, and if we can take pesticides, the usage of it down further. When I was elected, we did 80% pesticide, 20% larvicide. We've turned that around. We're now 20% insecticide, about 80% larvicide. In doing that, the cost is hugely different. And it's probably easy to say that the switch saved this community about $20 million over the years I've been in office. So yes, I'm very game that we can start looking at more things, maybe even irradiated mosquitoes whenever they come approved for trials. So it's all about getting the right thing done, the right mixture to take care of our mosquito problems.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Brandon, same question.
Same question. Could you repeat it, Larry, please?
Yeah, last week the State Agriculture Department okayed the release of mosquitoes born with the Wolbachia virus to kill the disease-carrying bugs. And I know on the table is to do a release on Stock Island and in Key Largo, and I believe that might be voted on Friday. Would you vote for that so soon?
Thank you, Larry. Yes, and when I first started this campaign, Wolbachia was one of the things that I was researching, and they've been doing testing for that extensively in Australia, although it be with a different species, the Aedes albopictus. They're hoping that much of that information can transfer over to the Aedes aegypti, which is a mosquito that we're trying to target here in Key West. So I believe there's been quite a bit of research done on that. It is a natural occurring bacterium that is found already in approximately 70% of insects in the environment. So, that being, they say it's natural. I mean, there's still unanswered questions. We don't know what could happen with that, but like I said, there has been extensive testing done in other species that are within the same subclass. So I think it is a good thing. I think also with Wolbachia, one of the benefits that they're bringing to the table is that it will actually not only sterilize the mosquito, but that it will also prevent virus replication. So that's another positive that we can look forward to. Not only is it going to sterilize, but if the mosquito was to be infected, it would not allow that virus to replicate in the mosquito and therefore spread to a person that it would bite.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay.
This question is for both of you. We have yet to see any hard financial numbers from Oxitec on the cost of this test, on the cost of these mosquitoes, and going beyond this, if the test is allowed and if this is something that is taken beyond just the test phase, what the ongoing cost will be to the mosquito board. Considering how close the relationship seems to be with Oxitec currently, can you all explain your comfort level with not knowing how expensive this may be eventually?
Brandon, you start.
Thank you, Kay. Prior to his departure, Director Doyle did a presentation, and it was proposed by Oxitec that if we were to move forward with this after the trial, there was a 5-year plan set in place, and what was proposed that we would not be spending any more than we're currently spending on our pesticide and larviciding programs. So as the genetically modified mosquitoes are released, we would slowly bring down the level of adulticide and larvicide that would be used, and therefore it would balance out the budget to come out to equal the same amount that we would be paying. And again, like I said, this was presented to us prior to the departure of Director Michael Doyle, and that is the information that I have received. Thank you.
Steve?
Brandon is correct. Prior to Michael's departure, he did do a presentation for the board and gave some numbers to us. I have been asking him for 3 or 4 years, what is this going to cost? The thing that I always got was it will not cost any more than what you're already spending right now. Well, a chunk of our budget is in the millions of dollars for larvicide and pesticide, plus the cost of staff to put that out and work our neighborhoods. So when Michael did the presentation, he indicated that we would, of course, be reducing the amount of larvicides and pesticides that we use and replacing it with the genetic mosquitoes. And the figure he used was somewhere around $1.5 million. That would be an ongoing. He did not ever say to us that 1.5 million the next year might be 500,000 less or 250,000 less. And that is a concern to me. Again, I have said it's a tool, it's a very successful tool in the trials that have been done, in some of the countries, and they've gotten really good mosquito reduction numbers. I'd like to see how that pans out with the Cayman Islands now that they're doing a trial and actually rolling it out and commercially using them, and perhaps we can see some research from that and it would help us better make a decision.
Thank you, Steve. Dan?
Do you think the district's current approach to working with private companies trying new technologies, whether that's Oxitec or Mosquito Mate, is appropriate? And if so, why? And if not, what would you change?
Steve?
Thank you. That's a great question. We have been a cutting-edge, leading mosquito control program in the nation. We are the program that started using a liquid larvicide, which is the helicopter that flies over your house in Key West, Old Town, and sprays a little mist out that you see all over your windshield. That has become an excellent tool and been used quite a bit now in Miami Beach, and it is proven to be very effective. That was kind of a partnership that we did with the manufacturer of the BTI. Again, there's not new pesticides coming down the highway, so if we could work with other companies, we have great research department. We've done research on everything from Miami blue butterfly larvae to utilizing different pesticides and different aerial applications to see how they work better. I think it makes us a better mosquito program by working with some of the vendors. I hope they will be considerate with us down the road in the first year or two that we use their product. Excuse me, their product. But even better is what we're doing will help all of the other mosquito districts in the nation, if not in the world. And it's a nice contribution that we can make out of our little island.
Dan, you want both of them?
Yes, please.
Okay, Brandon.
Well, and I can't speak to how extensive the research department is of our local mosquito control. I would like to say that it is very, and they do a very good job. As we can see, we really don't have that much mosquito problem as we have in the past. So with that being said though, we can't spend all our taxpayer dollars in the mosquito control budget on research and development. So we have these private companies, we have these individuals that are putting their life savings into these technologies because they believe in it. And I've spoke with Herb Nyberg, and I can't remember the specific name of his company, but he's developing an acoustic product, an acoustic larvicide. It does not use any chemical whatsoever. It's a device that can be placed in a breeding area in water and emits an acoustic pulse that actually ruptures the air sac of the larva of the mosquito, resulting in killing them. So, this can be deployed in multiple areas. There's multiple deployment techniques that can be used. So, I mean, I believe that we should be looking to these companies, these people that they're pouring, like I said, their life savings into these products, into their research and development to be able to, you know, that we could use these products and test them in the field for them, because the Mosquito Control District does have that extensive area of expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Naji, you're next up, but I'm going to have to ask each of you guys one question per candidate. We'll be here till 10 o'clock if everybody gets to do every question. So.
All right, this is for Stephen Smith. Our publication was contacted by people who showed us how mosquito control pellets dropped from helicopters, land on their roofs, and end up in their freshwater cisterns. They claim it happened repeatedly and that they became ill as a result. And in May, the Mosquito Control District was issued a notice of violation by the Florida Department of Agriculture for allowing that to happen. And I wondered, did you have any comment on this public safety issue?
Certainly. We do aerial application of larvicides. It's actually a bacteria that is impregnated into ground up corn cobs. There can be times when winds change and our helicopter is out doing a mission. It very well could have blown into someone's cistern or on their roof and gotten into their personal water supply. It has rarely ever been a problem in my 20 years on the board. In fact, this particular incident is the only one I've known of, and I'm not having any doubt that it happened. But it is something that when we hear of any kind of problem like that, it is very well vetted within our team. They find out what the problem is, how something could have happened, and they correct it. We're extremely good about that. If we knew in advance of someone getting sick off their water supply, I can assure you our team was out there on their property with them. Hopefully we won't have any things like that again. You know, you read an article about a bee kill at a beehive. We know where every commercial beehive is if the owners alert us. We alert them before we go out and do any kind of an aerial adulticide mission, and they can put a tarp over their beehive for that morning. The kill that you read about, it is my understanding we were not aware that hives had been moved to that neighborhood, and otherwise the guy would not have lost his hives. So we are on top of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Larry.
I guess we'll go to Brandon. Should there be term limits for this board?
Thank you, Larry. Absolutely. I believe there should be term limits with any board. You know, I just read something online the other day that stated, you know, term limits promote new ideas, prevent potential corruption, and prevent political career politicians. So, and I'm not going to say that I'm not a politician. I'm running for this seat, and if I were to get elected, then I would be. I'd like to consider myself as a civil servant. I'd like to serve my terms and then step down. You know, I believe Commissioner Shaw is also on the board, who has served for approximately 20 years, and now he's stepping down. He's seeing that this is, you know, that he's done his service to our community, and he's going to step down now to allow District 4 to have another representative. So again, I do believe that term limits are important in almost every civil servant position, and that, like I said, there's three aspects that it can do: promote new ideas, prevent possible corruption, and prevent career politicians. So thank you, Larry.
Can I have a couple minutes to speak to that?
No. Okay.
This question is for Steve. For quite some time this year, we heard all about the building in Marathon, how essential it was, how expensive it was going to be. The plans got changed several times, and how much of a tax hike was going to take place to pay for it. Then all of a sudden, as the election got closer, it seems that the Mosquito Board backed off of it. Do you think that it amended the plans to make it a smaller project? But do you think the election had anything to do with that decision? Do you think that if this wasn't an election year, it would have been gone through?
We voted like 9 times on that building, and Jill Cranagage was the deciding vote that changed the plan on that. She voted in favor of that building every time until something happened between our first final budget hearing and the second final budget hearing. I will tell you, the vote saved you a little bit of money. Your taxes did go up this year. It saved you somewhere between $20 and $35 this year on your property tax. Next year your taxes will go up. and the next year your taxes will go up if we do build a building, because there's no money to build the main operations center. If it had been done the way we initially voted it, you would have had an increase this year, and you would have had a double-digit decrease the next 2 years. So nobody saved a lot of money off this deal. We threw away basically over $1 million in design and engineering fees and planning for this project. It is an operations center. And some of my board members feel we don't need an operations center here. They think we can move everything to Marathon. As long as I'm your District 3 Commissioner, we will not be moving everything to Marathon. We can't be subject to having any kind of a weather problem that would prevent our people from coming down here and immediately doing their job. It would hinder our public health, and it would hinder our operations, and it would be the wrong thing to do. And no, folks, you didn't save any money at all. I voted against it.
Thank you, Steve. Nan? This will be the final question, and then you guys will do your wrap-ups.
Okay, this one's for Brandon. We pay way more in per capita in taxes for mosquito control than any other county in Florida. We've all seen some of our mainland neighbors now scrambling to contend with Zika. Do you think our current level of taxation is appropriate, and why or why not?
Thank you, Nan. You know, nobody likes paying more in taxes. You know, that's one thing that we can count on in life, is taxes and death. But, you know, we have the best mosquito control, and if not the nation, in the world. So I believe that what we're paying for is a great service, and, you know, what the mosquito control in Monroe County and Florida Keys does on a daily basis is what everyone else in Miami, you know, Palm Beach, Broward, has been scrambling to do as an emergency, you know, a reaction. So I believe that the money we spent is very well spent. I believe that Florida Keys Mosquito Control District is very proactive in their approach, and I believe that we can see the difference. And if, like you said, you know, just look to our neighbors to the north, you can see that they're just scrambling. I mean, we had to send our own helicopters up there for them to use, you know, with, I mean, the techniques and the methods and that we're using here are keeping us safe and keeping our community thriving and enjoyable and comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Brandon, as we've been doing since you got the mic, go ahead and let's have your closing statement, please. 90 seconds.
Thank you, Todd. I want to thank Hometown Pack, or just Hometown now, and
thank you for that.
the studios in Key West. You know, again, I'm Brandon Pinder. I'm running for Mosquito Control Board District 3. You know, I have a background in information technology that I can bring to the board. I believe in thorough research for any new technologies that we use. I also have the experience in construction of new hotels, which I can lend to the construction of our new facility here. I do understand complex budgets as being the project manager for technology and the builds of that. You know, I do believe in full transparency. I believe in the health and safety and economic well-being of our community. This is my home. I grew up here. I went away to school. I came back because this is where I want to be. This place is important to me. It's special to me. So I want to help protect it. I want to serve the citizens the best I can. Like I said, full transparency, fiscal responsibility, and the health and safety of economic well-being of our community is most important to me. So again, I just ask you all to remember Pinder on November 8th, or if you get out and go vote early or vote by mail, just remember Brandon Pinder for Florida Keys Mosquito Control District 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Steve?
I'd like to say in closing, I am the only member of our Board of Commissioners that takes time out of his own schedule to attend conferences and classrooms, and I teach commissioners classes twice a year. I believe education for the commissioners is important. I don't think anyone wins when commissioners don't bother to go and learn a little bit more about what we do. We have a budget for it. It's been in the budget for the last 20 years, and it should be done. I have fought to have the best mosquito control program in the nation. I advised against the budget cuts that the board put through over the last 7 years. They spent all the reserves we had using the little mantra that we are not a bank, we can't keep everybody's money. Well, that's great, because they have known, and I have encouraged them for 8 years, that we were going to have to move the building, and nobody bothered to put $1 a year aside for that project, knowing we have to be out of that building by December 31st of next year or pay another $500,000 back rent penalty. So I'm the guy who has the education. I am very much on top of what we're doing. I'm aware of the needs of this community and the needs of mosquito control, and we're not going to do well having trailers sitting out on the Gulf of Mexico. That is a waste of taxpayer money. It is not safe for our environment, our economy, and all we need is our mosquito control program to be twisted sideways by a storm or something, and our economy will tank. Thank you. Please remember me when you go to the polls. Smith, I've been there a while, and I will continue doing a good job for you.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you to our mosquito control candidates. If we could get the candidates for state representative to come on up. I'll take the time, as we always do, to thank Kelly Friend, our other Kelly, our audio Kelly from Audio Video in Paradise. She does really cool TV installations too, the ones that disappear and come down from the ceiling or come up from the back of your bed, or the front of your bed, I guess it is. Yeah. I've heard that, I've never really seen it. Once the lights get to you, Holly, it'll be fine. All right, let's get right to it so we can keep moving along. I know if it seems like I'm speeding us along, I am. So, Holly, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
I'm Holly Raschein, and I'm running for re-election as your state representative, and I'm running to preserve our livelihoods and lifestyles in the fabulous Florida Keys.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dan Horton. I'm a heavy breather, apparently. Dan Horton, Democrat for the State House of Representatives in District 120. It's a pleasure to be here today.
All right, before you get started, Larry from the Keynoter.
Dan, this is for you. How do you respond when Monroe County residents say District 120 has always been and should remain a Keys seat held by a Keys resident?
Well, there are a couple things. One, it is important that you have someone that serves as state representative that focuses on the Keys. But one important thing to keep in mind is that the districts are based on population. So Monroe County's population is pretty much staying the same, and it's not really going to expand anymore in the future because of the restrictions on the building. So what you have to remember is that as the population of Florida grows, this district is slowly but surely going to take up more and more and more of Miami-Dade. It's inevitable. So I think what's really important is that you do make sure you get a representative that's going to serve the Keys, but also keep in mind that serving the folks up in Miami-Dade, up in South Dade, Homestead, Florida City, that's going to be a reality for the future. So.
A little clarification. If you want to ask early on like this, if you want to ask both candidates the same question, do that. For the candidates, if you're going to take your full time for every question, for the second round, we'll have to only go to one, if that makes sense. So, you good, Larry?
I'm good.
Okay. Kay?
Okay, I'll ask Holly this question then. We had a story in the newspaper just a couple of days ago about the windstorm, the rate hikes for the insurance company that Citizens is doing and is proposing. What will you, have you done to try to protect the Keys and keep those rates down?
Thank you, Kay, and that's a great question. One of the big issues facing our community, and it's been a tremendous part of my professional career working with firm fair insurance rates in Monroe over the years, first as a legislative aide and then as a legislator, and making small tweaks to our insurance laws, hopefully bringing some rate relief down to property owners. And most recently, what you're talking about is the rate increase that Commissioner Altmaier is proposing from the Florida Insurance Commission. And I, with a bunch of other stakeholders, including firm Monroe County, had put together a letter to the commissioner asking him that he hit the pause button on that rate increase. For the first time in many, many years, one of the scientific models had come back saying, wow, the Monroe County is really doing great work at hardening their homes and taking advantage of the mitigation credits and things like that. Maybe this year they don't need a rate increase. In fact, they might deserve a rate decrease. So we put the request in on behalf of Monroe County to please hit the pause button, take a look at this issue a little further, listen to the science, pay attention to what we have going on here in Monroe County, and let's hit the pause button on that. And unfortunately, the commissioner, and he is new to the job, chose to deny our request, and will be proceeding with that. And I know Firm is taking it to the next level.
Thank you, Helen. Good, Kay? Okay, Dan?
This one's for Dan. How can you effectively represent the Keys in a Republican-controlled legislature?
I think that a Democrat can still be effective up in Tallahassee. I mean, we've seen it in the past, but one of the things that we have to keep in mind are that the issues that should have bipartisan support in Tallahassee. And I think clean water is one of those. It's something that I talk about on the campaign trail constantly. It's my #1 priority to make sure that we restore the flow of Lake Okeechobee through the Everglades and into the Florida Bay. And you're actually seeing across the state that this clean water issue, especially with restoring the flow, is something that's gaining a lot of traction by both Republicans and Democrats, because it shouldn't be a bipartisan issue, or it should be a bipartisan issue. But the most important thing to know is that there are big issues that I think that we can move in Tallahassee. But I do think that after this election year, hopefully you're going to see more Democrats up in Tallahassee. So.
Thank you, Dan. Nadja?
This is for both of you. Florida law only allows a few large utility companies to sell power directly to consumers. What is your position on opening up the solar market in Florida and allowing small solar energy providers direct access to consumers?
Do you want me to take that one first, Naja, since Dan's been hogging the mic? Just kidding.
Come on.
Yes, I think, Naja, we are the Sunshine State, and we need to be opening up resources like solar and wind, and I think you mentioned ocean turbines earlier, and I think empowering the smaller utilities like we have here in the Keys with Keys Energy Service, and also our co-op that serves us in the Upper Keys. I think that it allows us to broaden our energy portfolio, allows us to less reliance on fossil fuels, which I think have a negative impact on the environment, and we're seeing that firsthand as a very environmentally sensitive state. So yes, I do support empowering the little guy.
So would you move for legislation to change the status quo, which basically prohibits that right now?
Yes, and I was a supporter of Amendment 4 that was on the ballot in the primary, and I think that with the voters speaking so resoundingly loud on that issue, we're hopefully going to see some kind of movement amongst the bigger players to allow, again, the little guys to have a seat at the table.
Dan?
I absolutely am an opponent of the amendment that's on the ballot this year regarding solar. What the reality, the true answer to your question is that nothing as far as solar energy is really going to get done in Tallahassee until we take a very serious look at campaign finance. These big energy companies spend a lot of money making sure that representatives like Holly, representatives in the state Senate, make sure that they get the answer that they want whenever that vote comes up. To give you an example, up in Homestead, right, you've got the nuclear power plant at Turkey Point. They told ratepayers that it was going to cost $50 million to solve the hypersalinity that they created by not policing their own systems properly. They said that they were going to pass that cost on to the ratepayer. Less than, I think, 2 months later, they distributed $35 million, their parent company distributed $35 million to their top 5 executives. So you have a situation where they're telling us up in Miami-Dade, and you down the line, because you're in the Keys, that it's going to cost $50 million to repair their problem, and then they take $35 million and give it to their top 5 executives. That is obscene. That's obscene, but that's the power of big money in our politics. And so until we solve that problem, solar's never going to come down the pipe. So I am proud to say I have taken no money from any big utility companies, and I will not under any circumstances, and I will fight for solar as hard as I can.
Thank you. Holly, as is our rule, he called you out by name. If you can have 30 seconds if you want to respond, or you can.
No, thank you. And I believe that FPNL should shoulder the cost of taking care and cleaning up the saltwater plume that is dangerously close to our water supply. They caused the issue. It's an incumbent on them to take care of the issue. They are under extremely strict orders from DEP to get to work on this, and that is something that they have already begun. They did petition for, I believe, a 37% rate increase. They were denied that request. That will not be on the backs of the ratepayers, and I'm excited to see that, that movement.
Larry.
This will be for both, and I guess, so we can go back to Dan. The 4 states that have legalized recreational marijuana have seen windfalls in tax incomes, bolstering their budgets. Would you be in favor of or against for Florida for recreational marijuana?
I think first, to get to your question second, I think first of all we have to get to medical marijuana. I think that there are a lot of people suffering from some very serious debilitating illnesses that absolutely deserve to have access to medical marijuana to treat those illnesses. Now, I got you, I'm coming to it, I promise. I do support recreational marijuana at the state level, but I don't think that that's ever going to happen at the legislative level. I think that that's going to be something that's going to be passed by the citizens of Florida by a constitutional amendment, and I think that that's appropriate. I think in that situation specifically, the people of Florida should be able to decide whether or not they want to legalize it. But you're absolutely right, especially in a legislature that's dominated by Republicans that talk about free market economics. That's a really big thing that you've seen create a lot of wealth and a lot of public funds in other states that could be put to some really good use in Florida.
Thank you, Dan. Larry, is you want for both?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And Larry, I think that the ballot initiatives and especially Amendment 2 on the ballot this year and then previously, you're seeing the voters react to the legislature not taking this issue seriously and getting things done, whether it's recreationally or medically. Bills have been filed on both issues. I was a huge supporter of the low THC version of Charlotte's Web and was a co-sponsor in that bill that would have allowed for children and adults with seizure disorders to have that relief. I also was a huge fan and co-sponsor of the right to try for medical marijuana for people who are terminally ill. And I believe, I'm pretty proud of the way that the language has been tightened on the ballot this year. The one thing that I do like to throw out caution to is anytime we put things in the Constitution, they're not in stone, but it becomes very, very difficult to tweak them and make changes if changes are needed, whether it's medical or recreational. That said, in a state like Florida, where we have a long history of issues with drugs, whether it was back in the 80s, prescription drugs in the 2000s, or now medical marijuana, we want to make sure that people have access to the substances that bring them relief, and whether that's recreational or medical. I'm sure we're going to see recreational on the ballot here pretty soon, following suit to Colorado, Oregon, the state of Alaska, where I'm from, and Washington.
Thank you, Ellie. Kate?
This question is for both also. As you know, everything that happens upstate in Florida trickles down to the Keys eventually. And some of those things affect us and affect our environment especially. Do you oppose or do you agree with the state purchasing the Big Sugar property to try to protect some of our water supply down here?
Will you start, Holly?
Thank you so much, Kate. And that is a huge issue and a very big priority, I think, of the state and of mine. I've worked over the years as a legislative aide and now as a legislator, first on completing our wastewater system and working from communities or with communities from Key West to Key Largo on obtaining that $50 million that we were able to use to finish our central sewer system. Secondly, we moved on to the Florida Key Stewardship Act, which addressed nearshore water quality issues right here at home, as well as land acquisition. Those two issues being done, well, not done, but moving forward on, now we need to focus on Florida Bay, and whether it's projects like Senator Negron, initiated buying land south of the lake, Waco, absolutely. 100% about bringing fresh water back to Florida Bay. Finishing the bridging of Tamiami Trail. The Everglades Foundation has made the spreader canal, the C-111 spreader canal, a big deal. I stand by bringing fresh water to Florida Bay.
Dan?
Yeah, I absolutely support purchasing the sugar land. We have to do it. I've signed the Now or Everglades Declaration. I was very proud to do that. Holly has not yet signed it. I hope she joins me soon. But it's one of those things where if you represent the Florida Keys, you absolutely have to support clean water. But right now, there are spots in the Florida Bay that are twice as salty as normal seawater. And when you start to see that happen, I know in '87, that triggered a blue-green algae bloom. When you're talking about somewhere like Monroe County and the Florida Keys that depend almost entirely on commercial fishing and the tourism industry, you get an algae bloom down here and that's wiped out. I mean, the economies will just absolutely crumble. So the top priority for me going up to Tallahassee is absolutely going to be clean water, period, the end.
Thank you, Dan.
You called me out by name. Can I respond? All right. So
30 seconds.
just wanted to let you all know that I was one of the first elected officials out on Florida Bay when we first learned about this issue, meeting with stakeholders and scientists from South Florida Water Management District to the Army Corps. And on the pledge, I've taken on a personal policy since I took office, one that I learned from my mentor and one of my former bosses, not to sign petitions or pledges, no matter what the cause. I stand behind bringing fresh
5
water to
seconds.
Florida Bay and will not be intimidated or bullied into signing a piece of paper.
Thank you, Holly. Little note for all the upcoming candidates, if you call someone out, you've got to pay for it. So. Nan, please.
This is for Holly. We're an area of critical state concern, as you know, and have been for decades. Do you think the state is currently exercising an appropriate level of oversight over development in the Keys? And if so, why? And if not, how would you like to see it change?
Thank you, Nan, and that's a really great question. We are an area of critical state concern, and actually the city of Key West is its own area of critical state concern, and it's a designation that I have used many times up in Tallahassee in crafting policy, either adding us to legislation or, I guess, what would I say? Taking us out, I guess, of legislation that might be harmful to us as an area of critical state concern. DEO, the Department of Economic Opportunity, has definitely had some pretty major oversight when it comes to our building permits, and I think has done a pretty grand job when it comes to making sure that we don't end up as a Miami Beach. They've seen to it that we have completed the mandate, the unfunded state mandate of completing our central sewer system. And they are going to have a very big role when it comes to our ROGO system, which is coming to an end. We're going to reach build out here in the next 7 years or so, and we're going to need a lot of flexibility from the state when it comes to our transient units, to our workforce units, to what works for Key West isn't necessarily going to work for Isla Mirada, what works for Marathon, and so on. It's going to be different for Key Largo. So I think the level of oversight is good. I think that we need to maintain a certain amount of accountability and transparency with our state agency and make sure that our pristine environment is preserved and that our way of life is preserved.
Thank you. Nadja, last question. Should be for Dan.
Yes, Dan. As a state representative, what would you or could you do to help with our local affordable workforce housing challenges?
That is probably the most difficult problem I think that I talk about constantly with people. I've looked across states and different communities. Look in San Francisco, they have the same problems with affordable housing. I went to the Affordable Housing Summit a few months ago, and one of the big problems that I heard were developers saying that they can't really justify the expense of building affordable housing because they don't have any profit margins on it. And I understand that, and I think so. One thing that we have to do is we have to take a serious look at the incentives that we provide to developers, and hopefully be able to provide adequate incentives for them to be able to make some money off of the deal. But also, I think we have to look into nonprofit developers. Those exist. I know that we've looked at them in Monroe County before, but going out there and finding some nonprofit developers that may be willing to come in and do it at a much lower cost is something that we've got to take seriously, because the affordable housing crisis down here is just that. It's a crisis, and people can't afford to make ends meet. So I take it very seriously, and I am doing as much research on the issue as possible.
All right, thank you, Dan. Keep the mic. Your closing statement.
Closing statement, okay. First off, I want to just sincerely thank you all for this opportunity. This is the last time I'll speak at Hometown PAC. You guys have something here with Hometown that should be the envy throughout the district. There's nothing else like that. But I had someone tell me a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of funny, but they couldn't take me seriously as a candidate because I wore glasses. They couldn't take my campaign seriously because my volunteers make their own signs, like are on the wall over there. But I am very proud of my volunteers. And I am very proud that someone, absolutely, I am very proud that someone pinned me as someone that doesn't come off like that typical politician that they see. I have run the quintessential grassroots campaign. I've raised less than $20,000 in this campaign because I had 3 goals coming in this campaign. The first one was that by the time I finished, I wasn't going to owe anything to anybody except the people that live in my district and the constituents that I serve. And I can proudly say that if I go to Tallahassee and you give me that honor, I won't owe anything to anyone except all of you, period. The second thing is I wanted to show you all that I'm a fighter. I like to think that I'm a pretty nice guy, but I will absolutely fight against the powers that be when they step on the toes of the people that they are supposed to serve. I don't take kindly to it, and I don't have much patience for it. And thirdly, the most important thing that I wanted to make sure, that I showed you all my heart. Really, I have a compassion for people that I got you. I'm very passionate about helping people. Something that's driven me. I know. Okay, that's it. Dan Horton, State House. Thank you.
And Dan, I just thought of the word. It's carve out. I've used our designation to carve us out of many bad policies. It just came to me as I was sitting here. But really, thank you to Hometown PAC. Thank you to the City of Key West and the studios. I love what you've done with the place. And it's just been a real honor to dedicate my career to public service, whether it be in a legislative aide or a legislator. And I'm so proud to be raising my family, living here and working here, and it really is a true inspiration to serve you in Tallahassee. It drives me to take on really, really difficult issues, and let me tell you, there are some when it comes to the Keys. And I'm not afraid to tackle bipartisan issues or not so partisan issues. And one of my proudest accomplishments is being the first Republican in the state of Florida to ever sponsor anti-discrimination policy when it comes to the LGBT community. I'm happy to cross lines. I've done that many times, and another major vote I took was being one of 4 Republicans in the Florida House to vote to expand Medicaid, which would have given coverage to over 800,000 Floridians and 13,000 Floridians just here in our district. And to think that my vote can be bought by a contributor is simply indefensible. And want to let you know that if I were to vote against a donor, they're happy to support my opponent and maybe not my re-election next time. So with that, it's just an honor to be able to make sure that the Keys have a seat at the table in Tallahassee. And again, hope that you will stand with me and vote Holly Raschein for state representative on November 8th.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, guys. One of these people will be our state representative. Will the state attorney candidates come up, please? Catherine, Dennis, and Shad. And we'll thank the studios, Studios of Key West, because they give us a greatly discounted price, and we still pay for it, though. So we need your contribution. I'm going to ask the panelists, we're starting to get a little tight on time. Let's do the first round with one question, a question to an individual candidate. We'll see how we're doing, and then we'll do it to both candidates. Yes, you start, Kate. Dennis, we're rolling here.
Sorry. I'm stuck in traffic.
But that's not keeping you from walking across the room. Right, Dennis, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dennis Ward.
Okay.
My name's Dennis Ward. I'm running for state attorney. I want to be your next state attorney.
Everybody use the mic so that they can get it on the recording.
Okay. Can you hear me? Could you hear me before? No. Oh, good. My name is Dennis Ward, and as most of you know, I was the state attorney from 2009 to 2013. My qualifications are many.
Wait, that's enough.
That's it?
Yes. Shad, you're going to get into
so I did it right the first
You're
time.
going to have a half hour.
Oh, great.
Or 20 minutes.
Thanks.
Shad.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shad, Neiss. This is my first time running for office, and I'm asking for your vote because, like over 70% of Floridians, I believe that the time is right for criminal justice reform. Thank you.
Catherine, I think you know where we're going with this.
I think I've learned. Okay, hi, I'm Catherine Vogel, I'm your state attorney, I'm running for re-election.
Thank you. Okay, again, we're going to try, well, let me ask this of the candidates. We can do more where you guys get to answer all the questions, where the different candidates get to answer the same question, but you have to discipline yourselves, and we can't go 90 seconds for every one of you. We'll never get through. Or you can just do individual questions. I'll let you guys work it out, but I want to get through two runs. So let's see how it goes. Kay, you're up first.
Okay, no pressure. All right, this question is for Catherine. In response to the Community to Rescue Our Hospital and their the ad that they took out in yesterday's Citizen, and I understand there was some discussion between yourself and Harry Bethel and some of the other members of the committee about convening a grand jury. The Citizen first wrote about this issue back in July, actually, it was several months ago. What have you done, or what have you not done, or what are you going to do about convening a grand jury to look into some of the issues of the hospital?
Okay, we have to understand that a grand jury can only look at things involving a crime, a state crime. So my office has been looking and examining information to see whether or not we can establish a state crime. There's a difference between a federal crime, which is the Stark violations. I know that Dr. Girth believes that he knows about some Stark violations. That is a violation which is a federal law, which is not something that the state attorney can take before a grand jury. We've been in discussion with the Attorney General and their consumer protection to see whether or not there's something there. And I don't want to go into things too much because I really can't talk about investigations, but we do have the emails. We are looking at them, and if and when we find something that can be criminal, we will take it to the grand jury. But I cannot take something to the grand jury unless there's a crime involved. So, you know, I could say, well, let's take it to the grand jury, and I would be pandering to this re-election. And that's something that I really can't do.
Thank you, Catherine. Dan?
I'm going to try a question for all of you. Is using law enforcement to repeatedly arrest, prosecute, and incarcerate homeless people worth the money and time, and is it effective at addressing that issue?
Why don't you start this one, Shad? That sounds up your alley.
Well, thank you. I'll be happy to. No, I think this really reflects a misuse of our law enforcement resources. We've got several million people incarcerated in this country, another 7 million on some form of supervised release. It's estimated that around 50% of those people have a serious mental illness, and most of these folks are nonviolent, non-predatory offenders. It's for that reason that we currently have 3 times as many people incarcerated with serious mental illnesses than we have in treatment facilities and psychiatric hospitals. And the result is, in addition to being incredibly expensive, incarceration tends to leave people with disordered thinking worse off and more prone to recidivism and repeated contacts with the criminal justice system. It's much cheaper to provide treatment to someone who's mentally ill, around the order of $6,000 a year for outpatient weekly treatment, in contrast to about $30,000 a year for incarceration. So it turns out to be about 500% cheaper to provide care to somebody than it does to punish them. Thank you.
Thank you, Shad. Dennis.
Being a veteran of the Vietnam War and looking at the amount of veterans on our streets that suffer from PTSD, and you know, a lot of them were just getting into the service to escape a bad home life and didn't have the education and look for some type of place in the service to learn a trade and what have you, and got out and things didn't go well, or they were suffering from PTSD and they ended up on our streets. I think probably a good first step would be maybe a veterans court here in Monroe County. And another step would have to be some type of mental illness evaluations. Or help for these people who suffer from mental illness, but we would need a lot of money from the legislature, and I think we could probably save money because it is a significant cost to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Catherine.
I agree with both of my opponents. I do believe that incarceration is really fruitless. My office actually, we don't have a veterans court. However, there is a law that allows us to fashion a sentence that was consistent with what the veterans courts are doing in the other jurisdictions. I believe that we should have a mental health court. I know that I've heard that mentioned by the two of the public defender candidates, and I applaud that. I don't think that there was much of a will previously to have a mental health court, but it would be terrific for us to do that. Unfortunately, and I certainly hope that our legislators are still here, in order to do that, we're going to need a lot of money to fund treatment, because treatment is really the answer.
Thank you, Catherine. Nadja?
Yes, this question is for Catherine Vogel. You spoke moments ago about very deliberate investigation prior to taking the hospital issues to the grand jury. So I want to ask you this question. 3 months after the grand jury returned a no true bill in the Charles Eimers death in custody case, a bystander video shot by a Colombian tourist surfaced. It revealed some important truths about what really happened to Charles Eimers. The phone number for that Colombian tourist was in the case file provided to you. Did you at least try to obtain the video before presenting the case to the grand jury? And if not, why not?
We were unaware that there was another video. After looking at the video, it really didn't show anything other than what had previously shown, and previously what the other testimony was that had been presented to the grand jury.
My question, though, if I could just...
No comments from the audience.
My question had more to do with the investigation prior to bringing it to the grand jury, not about whether the evidence would have changed your decision or their decision, but there was a phone number in the case file. FDLE did not call the number. Apparently you didn't either. The defendant's attorney, the family's attorneys did. Why wouldn't your office make that phone call?
Well, my office did a thorough investigation. They called all the numbers that they possibly could find, and they did not find the video. So am I telling you that sometimes evidence doesn't pop up that could change things? That's possible. But we did a thorough investigation. It was investigated by FDLE, was investigated by the grand jury, was investigated by the Department of Justice, and everybody came to the same exact conclusion, that the police officers did nothing that was indictable.
Okay, Larry?
This is for all three, whether in public or private practice. What case did you handle that turned out the most poorly for you, and why, and your client?
Let's just start at the end with Dennis and come on down. This is one of those ones you can make it a short answer.
I don't admit to any malpractice up here or anything, you know. I still have a couple of cases pending up there. But the worst one with the biggest disaster? I can't think of one. I'm sorry. I'd like to answer the question, but I can't think of one.
Shad?
I think my most humbling and disconcerting experience in the profession occurred in a wrongful death case that I brought in federal court. There was a gentleman in a federal facility who had a serious illness that was very costly to treat. He was being held in a private for-profit prison owned by Corrections Corporation of America. And as soon as he was admitted, all of his medical treatments were discontinued. He wasted away to about 85 pounds and died. And my expert witness seemed to think it was a slam dunk. His treating physician, who warned that he would die if they discontinued his treatment, thought it was a slam dunk. But when we brought it into federal court, we discovered that they really don't have much of an appetite for holding the Department of Corrections or the private prison companies accountable. And it felt awful not being able to get justice for that family. But it was eye-opening and enlightening.
Thank you, Shad. Catherine.
Let's see. Probably one of my very first cases as a defense attorney, I was doing a DUI. I was defending somebody in a DUI, and we lost it. I thought that we had a good go of it. So it was the first time I had done any kind of defense work, and I had done a lot of criminal prosecution, had won a lot of cases, so it was sort of an interesting situation where I was going to lose my first my first defense case.
Thank you. Kate.
This question is for Dennis Ward. I'm curious. You lost the election the last time to Catherine. Some might say that your zealousness in prosecuting folks may have led to that defeat. How do you address people who might claim that you go overboard in prosecuting certain elements?
Well, I don't think we lost any of those cases, did we? We prosecuted people for stealing taxpayers' dollars. Over $1 million in taxpayers' dollars just in the school district alone. Mosquito Control Operations Director, $5,000. Bahama Village, I mean, and I can go on and on and on. We didn't lose any of them. A lot of them did jail time. A lot of them got probation. A lot of them lost their jobs. The head of the FDLE down here, homestead fraud. 2 or 3 people on mosquito control. We changed a lot of things here. We changed the way that the whole school district is run. Instead of having 2 elections, an election for a school board and an election for a school superintendent, now the school superintendent is appointed by the school board. We changed enough positions on the mosquito control board to change a lot of things there. So, you know, I'm committed to doing that. I'm committed to fighting public corruption. I'm committed to taking the big cases, just like this hospital case. You know, I don't shy away from these cases. And I disagree with the state attorney. There's plenty of cases that have gone to a grand jury that didn't involve crime. Thank you.
May I?
Yeah, yes, 30 seconds.
No, there are 2 ways that a case can go to the grand jury. It can go to the grand jury either because it's a crime or because it's a public official or a public agency. This is not, this hospital is not a public agency. So it cannot go as an investigation into a public agency. There must be a crime in order for it to go to the grand jury. That's exactly black letter law.
Thank you, Catherine. Dan.
I guess this is the flip side to Larry's question. Can you each briefly describe one experience or action of yours that demonstrates why you and not your opponents is the right person for this job?
Let's start with Shad, then we'll do Catherine, and then Dennis.
There was an interesting civil case I had a couple years ago where a homeowner was getting flooded out by a property owner, a multifamily apartment building next door, and they were channeling all their rainwater onto these people's property and flooding them out in periods of heavy storm. And there was a natural grade to the land that suggested that's where rainwater might just go anyway. So it wasn't a clear case, but I was able to get the city involved with a water project, get both of the neighbors on the same page, and we designed a stormwater runoff channel to alleviate the problem. There was money set aside in the government to help them pay for that, and we were able to make the problem go away for these 2 neighbors before the relationship got toxic. And it's that kind of collaborative problem solving that I'd like to bring to the state attorney's office, and I think would help me to do a very good job there. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Catherine.
Yes, probably the most heart-wrenching case that I had was back when I was in Miami when I prosecuted the Juan Carlos Chavez case. That was a case where a young boy went missing in the Redland area. He had been abducted by a child molester, I was involved in not only the search of the young man, but also after the person was arrested, I was involved in the questioning of the person, the defendant. I was involved in the prosecution of the case. It turned out to be a death penalty case where we were actually able to obtain the death penalty, and the defendant was executed. I think that what it demonstrated was the fact that I can cooperate with law enforcement, that I can be involved in the investigative process, that I can collaborate with other attorneys in putting together a case, where I can do some very high-level lawyering and follow through on a case, which is one of the things that I can bring to the office.
Thank you, Catherine. Dennis. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Describe one experience or action that demonstrates why you're the right person for this job.
Well, that was my whole philosophy in the office. We just spoke about it. I am the best person for the job. I don't back away from any difficult situations. You haven't seen any difficult situations tackled by the current administration. As a matter of fact, they're ducking and weaving more than Muhammad Ali did. So I'm the best person for this job, and I have proven leadership. And some of the cases that we tackled, most of you in this room know about. And most of you in this room know what happened in the last election. So we're going to see what happens here, and we're going to give the people of Monroe County an opportunity to choose one form of office work as opposed to mine. And that's why I think I'm a better person.
Thank you, Dennis. Nadja.
Okay, I'm going to start with Catherine Vogel, but the others can answer how they would have dealt with the situation I'm going to describe. In 2014, you were asked whether a KWPD strip search, allegedly a cavity search, filmed in the streets of Bahama Village was legal. You found no wrongdoing. What do you say to those in the village who claim that you would have reached a different conclusion if the naked rear on the public street had been a white butt instead of a black butt?
You know, I never said that there was nothing wrong with that, all right? And to be honest with you, whether or not, are you asking me whether we found something was criminal or whether there was something okay with it? If there's nothing okay with that, I never said that it was okay. That's a misquote of mine. I've never said that that was okay.
What did you tell the KWPD?
Well, I know that I did not tell them it was okay.
But do you recall reacting to that at all?
No, actually, I don't recall reacting to that at all. But I will tell you, I don't believe that it's okay to strip search anybody in the street. Now, are you asking me if we prosecuted the police officers for doing that? No. But that doesn't make it okay, and I never said it was okay, and I don't, well, I think enough's been said.
Thanks. Now, did you want to follow up from the other two?
Well, if I could just, basically, if that had come before either of you, would you go out of your way to tell the police department that there was something wrong with it and maybe push them to do something?
Nadja, I don't know that that's fair. I think
Well,
you're going back and forth with Catherine, and that's not how this is supposed to work.
I would never have told them it was okay. I would have instructed them that it wasn't okay. I also have a chief assistant who speaks to them, and
Catherine, I mean, let's kill the question.
Oh, all right.
Larry.
Getting back to what Shad was speaking about.
This will be the last question, and then we'll do our wrap-ups.
Then can I do all three?
Sure. But let's, 1 minute.
Be brief. Other than, we were talking about recidivism, other than a special court for veterans or a special court for mental health, what else can be added to this community to keep him out of the system in the first place?
Well, thank you so much for asking. I made a proposal at the last forum, which I think makes a lot of sense, and I'd like to invite us all to consider it as an alternative to a more expensive mental health court or veterans court, which would require the creation of a separate bureaucracy with personnel and staff. Earlier I mentioned that we could provide regular outpatient treatment for someone struggling with a mental illness for about $6,000 a year. and that compares very favorably to the $30,000 a year it costs to incarcerate somebody. If elected state attorney, I pledge $60,000 from my salary to create a pilot program for private sector mental health treatment for around 10 people to assess its effectiveness as a diversion to incarceration. And I'd like us to consider that as a private sector alternative to building another bureaucracy. Thank you.
Dennis.
Yeah, other than the mental health court and the veterans court that were mentioned, what else can be done, getting back to Nancy's question, to keep the people with the problems, you know, arrested every day, we see them in the sheriff's office, keep them from the system in the first place?
Well, I would imagine the police officers on the street get to know these guys. It's a small community, so they can probably work with them and work with the community and work with the state to maybe come up with some funding for job training. Medication is of the utmost importance. I mean, that's where you see things on the street, where you see a perfectly normal guy one day, and then a few days later, you know, this guy's out of control and in a fight or busting up a place, and you find out that the guy came off his medication. And usually there's a traumatic event that does that. It's going to have a mental health center somewhere here, either in Key West or somewhere in the middle Keys, to bring these people in and get them back on track and have them get the medication that they need.
10 seconds.
And maybe some job training in there too, and some homes.
Catherine.
The single most important thing that I believe that we could do is to provide housing for the homeless. That is going to give them an opportunity to stabilize themselves. You can't expect someone to become mentally, or to deal with a mental illness when they have to live out on the streets. I think it's unfair to expect people to abide by the law when they don't have a place to sleep at night. You can't expect them to get a job unless there's some place for them to sleep, some place for them to take a shower, some place for them to get dressed in the morning. So I believe that the number one thing that we can do is to solve, well, you know, it's hard to say to solve the homeless issue, but certainly to make provisions for those individuals who are homeless so that they have some place to be, so that they can begin to get a semblance of normal life. And without that, I tell you, I think that you're just going to have a revolving door of being arrested and psychiatric and substance abuse issues.
Time, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine, why don't you start with our closing statements. We'll go Catherine, Dennis, then Shad. You'll be the final.
Yes, I've been your state attorney for 4 years now. I am the state attorney who has 30 years experience in the prosecution office. I am the only state attorney here who has prosecuted a felony case. I've prosecuted many, many cases. I have experience in prosecution. I have experience in leadership. I know that one of my opponents has defended a felony case, but certainly I'm the one that has the most experience doing that. I have led this office. I've vowed to try my cases in the courtroom and not in the press, because I believe that it's very important that those people who are charged with a crime are presumed innocent, and that we are held to the burden of proving our case in the courtroom. And I don't discuss things in the press. I don't try my cases in the press. We've done an excellent job. We've improved our relationship with law enforcement, and so that we can cooperate with them. I'm asking for your vote in November. Elect me, Catherine Vogel. Re-elect me as your state attorney.
Thank you, Catherine. Dennis, 90 seconds.
As most of you know, I was the state attorney from 2009 to 2013. When you prosecute high-profile cases, which this present administration hasn't, these type of cases end up in the newspaper. It's a natural course. So I've spent 44 years in the criminal justice system. I've been a police officer, an assistant state attorney, an assistant public defender, and for the last 4 years, I've run a successful law practice. And my reasons for running are many. However, the ones that concern me the most are, and should concern you, are the lack of leadership, the lack of supervision, the lack of training, and downright laziness. These factors have resulted in the ruination of some very important cases, one of which is a double execution of a man and his girlfriend while her children slept soundly in the bedroom. The state attorney missed the deadline on that. This is a result of lack of leadership and lack of supervision. Another one is a lack of prosecution in a case involving 76 counts of child molestation, or child pornography. That case was reduced to 38 months. Usually there's a minimum mandatory of 15 years in that. So these are cases that I look at, situations that I'm concerned with, and it's a direct result of the ineffective leadership in the state attorney's office.
I'm going to ask
You're not
you
going
to
to do anything. What
respond.
do you mean
These are
you're
the
going to
closing statements. Shad.
All right, well, thank you all for coming out and listening to us. This is my first time running for office. I'm just trying to hang in there. Ultimately, I'm asking for your vote. Like most Floridians, I think the time has come for criminal justice reform. My campaign reflects a comprehensive strategy to try and reverse trends towards mass incarceration, to reduce juvenile contact with the criminal justice system, and to reform civil forfeiture practice. The status quo is not inevitable. We can change it, and if we stand together in November, we can make a change in our criminal justice system. So I hope I'll have your support. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. One of these people will be your next state attorney. We're going to try to bring it down a notch, and we're going to have a discussion about genetically modified mosquitoes. How could that be controversial? So come on up, guys.
This is about 30 seconds.
I'm going to say that they don't they'll have to pick one of the other two. 1 minute. We're back. Guys. All right, everyone, let's quiet down and sit down. Quiet down, everyone, please. Get the door shut. We're kind of doing this free form. The way this is going to work, we're going to try to keep the questions to 1 minute, and I'll let them finish their breath. The way it's going to work, our panelists will ask either side a question, then either side will have one of their representatives answer it. We're not going to we'll never get out of here. But this is very important. We want to give everybody enough time, and then we have our state reps coming up. Our U.S. Congress. So we're just gonna, Phil, will you start? Introduce yourself quickly, who you are, and you can even say which side you're on. Use the mic.
My name is Phil Goodman. I am a commissioner from District 2, my second term on the Mosquito Control Board. I'm currently the chairman. I'm retired from the chemical industry, and I'm also here representing as my commission today, as well as the operational people in mosquito control who are very much in favor of this project.
My name is Dr. Derric Nimmo. I'm from Oxitec. I'm the principal scientist at Oxitec, and I've been coming down to the Keys for the past 6 years to tell people about the project.
Hi, I'm Wray. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Keys Environmental Coalition. I also have a Master's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering, and I am Derric's #1 nemesis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Russo. I'm president of Florida Keys Environmental Coalition. For the record, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here running for anything. And I have no, and I can speak for Barry Ray also, I have no financial connection either directly or indirectly with Oxitec and Schreck, its parent company, or any of its competitors. Everybody should be able to say that.
Before Nin gets going, I know this is a hot subject. Let's keep catcalls to an absolute 0. And even the applause, don't use applause as a way to get around boos. So let's just be polite and respectful of everybody. Nan.
This question is for either Phil or Derric. I understand you and the FDA view this as a trial on the Aedes aegypti mosquito, but many residents of Key Haven and the Keys generally view it as a trial on the community, including the human population. Even if you disagree with that view, do you think they have the right to consent or not to this trial?
Yeah, okay. So there is a referendum. It's non-binding, so they do have a right to vote for the trial. That's been given by the Board of Commissioners. This environmental assessment was done through the FDA, the CDC, and the EPA. And from all the information in there, which is backed up by all the trials we've done, and also all the other publications, there's over 20 here, peer-reviewed publications of the data, they produced a final finding of no significant impact. And that was on human health, animal health, and the environment. So this trial that we're talking about here is very specifically to show that we can reduce the mosquito population in a particular area. The FDA, the CDC, and the EPA have already approved it as having no significant impact on human health, animal health, or the environment.
Thank you, Derric. Nadja.
I want to follow up on that a little bit, get a little deeper into that. In 1992, the United States signed onto an international human rights treaty called the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And it says no one shall be subjected without his free consent to medical or scientific experimentation. Isn't it true that residents of Key Haven who furnish the Aedes aegypti with their blood meals are essential participants in the Oxitec experiment? If so, shouldn't Oxitec be required under the treaty to obtain the individual consent of every resident before releasing the mosquitoes?
Well, that isn't actually up to Oxitec, that's up to the federal authorities that have regulated this. And so back in 2010, we went to all the regulatory authorities because we'd been invited down here by the then Director Ed Fussell, and we were looking at using the technology. So the federal agencies got together, the FDA, the CDC, the EPA, the USDA, FDACS, everybody, and they looked at this and they said, okay, well, where does this fall within the regulatory federal government process? And at the time, there wasn't actually a process for transgenic insects. There was for transgenic plants, but not transgenic insects. So they decided that because this was a technology that worked on mosquitoes, so it was you release the males, they contain the self-limiting gene, they mate with the females, pass it on, the offspring die. Because it affects the mosquitoes, they would do it under the Center for Veterinary Medicine. And this was a decision made by all the federal regulatory authorities. And so they did that. But even then, they have looked at human health, animal health, and the environment.
Thank you, Daryl.
But you do admit that the humans in Key Haven are essential to your experiment. You can't go do it in the middle of the Everglades, can you?
Well, no, of course not. But that's because this mosquito occurs in and around humans. That's how it transmits Zika, dengue, and chikungunya so effectively. So yes, we have to do it in an urban environment.
Thank you, Daryl. Larry.
Can I do, I guess, an answer from each side, not all four of you? Is it proper for the company that wants to make money off the release of the GM mosquitoes to have inserted itself politically into this, hiring a PR company under the name of the Florida Key Safety Alliance, try to recruit canvassers on Craigslist to go door to door, that kind of thing?
Let's start with the far end of the table.
The far end of the table. Well, of course not. That's one of the things, the problem we have of why they're doing this. If they have solid science, if they had solid procedures, if they had given complete information to the FDA and all the other letters he was talking about, this would have never gone this far. I mean, if you got all the basic information, the people from Oxitec should have been laughed out of the Florida Keys 4 years ago. We get this kind of information passed out to everybody. It's in the mail. Tried and tested in Brazil, Panama, and the Cayman Islands. And this is brought to you by this organization called Florida Keys Safety Alliance, paid for by Schreck by extension, Oxitec. Well, when somebody comes up to your house, they should say where the money came from. I'm from the Girl Scouts, I'm from the Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever it is, you should tell them, wow. You should tell them exactly where you're from. That doesn't happen here at all. This should not be going on in the Florida Keys, and we'll have more to say about their so-called tried and tested operations in Panama and everywhere else. A bunch of baloney, both.
Yes, I guess Bill, since he's a politician.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of things in this rollout weren't done exactly right. If we could call back some of these things, we certainly would. But, you know, also Mosquito Control is not that great of an organization to defend itself. You know, we don't have big PR budgets. I think we have to look beyond this. This program is so important because right now Zika and dengue fever and all these things are really just at our doorsteps. So somebody has to support and go door to door to try to promote it. Like I say, Mosquito Control, we're not the best ones to promote that. You know, we don't have big advertising budgets, but it's very important for everyone that I think that this technology be looked at in depth because it is potentially a nice tool for us. So the other side was going out door to door doing a lot of things. So I personally don't blame Oxitec for trying to defend its position here and to help Mosquito Control get the proper word out.
Can I have 30 seconds? Can I have 30
No,
seconds?
we can't. We'll be here. We'll never get anywhere. Okay. You'll have plenty of time. Plenty of time.
Oh, we do.
This question is for those, the two of you down at the end of the table that are against the release. We already know what the stance of Oxitec is regarding what the physicians requested as far as the additional testing that they wanted done because of the tetracycline. Oxitec's response has been no, it's not necessary. Interested to hear what your response is, and do you think that's necessary or not?
I have to jump in here. One of the things they were talking about having tested in Brazil and Panama, especially Panama, as successful. They used to say it was successful in Malaysia too, but you can go online and find out that it was found to be ineffective. They're no longer putting that out. They used to say Malaysia. Panama, the test failed. Why? Because it had too much tetracycline, the famous tetracycline. And I have to admit that when people from all walks of life come out and stand tall and try to protect their friends and family on the island of Key Haven, it's very important. We have a person in Key West, Dr. Norris, who stood tall and stood up and got over 30 doctors to agree. Getting 30 doctors to agree to anything is amazing. But is Dr. Norris here?
Yes. Yeah.
If anybody deserves a round of applause, it's Dr. Norris. He actually got the
I'm sorry, you didn't really answer the question.
What was that?
But do you think that they should have allowed the testing? Do you think the testing is necessary that the physicians were requesting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very simple request. It's not a very difficult test to do. And the problem is that, you know, we hear this, oh, all this human interest was actually put in there. There's no health and human safety oversight at all in this experiment. There's actually no oversight for our environment either. This is ridiculous. You have the possibility to have an invasive species actually create sustainable colonies in this in our environment. And that's wrong. And even worse, doctors who only have your care in mind have said this is an issue and we can do a simple test to prove whether or not it's promoting superbugs. And we should do that, especially when we have superbugs that we can't even treat with any antibiotic right now.
Thank you, Barry.
So thank you very much, Dr. Norris. We appreciate it.
Just as a rules thing, if you don't answer the question, you don't get a whole nother minute to answer the question. So, but we're trying to have a little latitude here.
We'd like to defend ourselves a little bit on that. Thank you.
Well, let's. I think it'll come up as more questions get asked. If not, we'll work on it. So, Nan.
This question is for Barry or Ed. The smallpox vaccine was controversial when it was introduced. More recently, opposition to childhood vaccinations are risking the loss of herd immunity, should public health questions be settled by public opinion?
Well, I think the process should. And that's what I'm saying before. If this was solid science and solid process, we'd have any problem with it. I mean, just recently, let me add to that, and that the screwworm issue came up, and they are releasing these irradiated flies, and that's good. It's been used in the United States since the 50s. It's a program. They have oversight, quality control, all the things you would want. This is a test. No oversight, no guidelines. None of the things that you need to be in place. So there has to be a process, there has to be quality control, there has to be United States quality control in our systems. We can't go by what's going on in other countries. We want to have it tested here, but it has to be informed consent. Again, if you were going to have this done in any prison, they would have to have signed in informed consent. In this particular situation, because they have come up with some kind of way to get around the rules, they're able to have this test on the people of Key Haven, who we have to come out and support and vote no. They're the guinea pigs, and that's wrong.
Yes. Time, Ed.
Thank you.
That was kind of a call out. 30 seconds if you want to respond.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of the tetracycline-resistant bacteria, that has been answered by the FDA. Dr. Norris has been to the FDA. He's asked the question directly to them. They have answered it in the environmental assessment. If anyone wants to read it, they can. In terms of oversight, this is overseen by the FDA, the CDC, and the EPA, 3 different agencies. This environmental assessment has been written. In terms of Malaysia, here is the paper that is actually from Malaysia. This is the paper from Panama, etc. Peer-reviewed data showing it works.
Okay, Naja.
So why can't you guys just give them some mosquito specimens and let them have at it?
I can answer that, yes. So what Dr. Norris is asking is if he can have some of our mosquitoes so that he can test them, and he'd like a third-party test, and that sounds fair enough, and but this is a regulated mosquito. So if we wanted to do that, we'd have to do that through the FDA. So we'd have to come up with an experiment through the FDA that was signed off by the FDA as statistically sound, had all the data that you could get into to answer a very specific question. And that's what we've been doing for 5 years with this environmental assessment. That's why it's so large. And so to do that, we'd have to go to the FDA, along with Dr. Norris, and ask them, okay, shall we do this experiment where we want to do this and prove this? They've already looked into this and come back to us and said, no, there is no significant impact or risk here whatsoever. And we've also looked into it further. I've been in discussions with Dr. Norris. We've looked into this further. And on the specific argument of Staphylococcus aureus, there is no evidence that Staphylococcus aureus is even associated with mosquitoes, let alone any sort of tetracycline resistance.
Time, Joe. Larry.
I'll go back to Derric again. I think a lot of people don't know what you plan to be the actual process. For example, when you go through the neighborhoods, are being dropped from the helicopter? Are they being blown out of the back of a truck, like the chemicals? And also, would each individual resident be notified of the days you'd be doing it?
Yes, certainly. We have been very, very open and transparent about everything with this. We have told where it's going to happen. I've been coming here for 5-6 years. I've been presenting town hall meetings, Key Haven specific resident meetings, doing everything we can to inform people about the process and all the data and everything. But the process is, we rear the mosquitoes up in Marathon. We put the males into their pots, about 2-litre pots. We'll drive them down to, if we get permission, we'll drive them down to Key Haven. And then we release in about, it'll be about 8 or 9 or 10 sites around Key Haven. And there's about 1,000 mosquitoes per pot. And we do that roughly every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, something like that.
Would you notify the residents individually?
Use Mike, Larry.
Would you notify the residents individually, this is what time and day we're going to be doing this?
Yes, we will notify the residents, yeah.
I have to respond to that. That's just nuts.
Well, I got an idea.
But the rules, the same rules can't
wait.
apply, Todd. The same rules can't apply.
He didn't say anything that.
But that's
just
childish.
trust me.
That's childish.
I'm going to get to you.
Bring it on that particular subject.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry, can I change subjects just real quick? Okay. I would like to ask this question again at the end of the table. Mr. Nimmo has in front of him a large environmental assessment, but I understand in reading some of the issues that you all have raised against it, that there's not an actual environmental impact statement. Can you address why you think that's important?
Yes, in so many ways. First off, an environmental impact statement takes objective opinion from both public and private sector. Experts get together and actually design the vetting process for any type of new experiment like this. This did not occur. When I met with the FDA back in May of 2015, I had a chance to meet with the science team with a few other of my colleagues. Basically, we went over this with them, that was very important to us, that the biggest issue right now, and you can hear Dr. Marjorie Hoy testify on this and many others, that there is no excellent policy to evaluate this type of genetic species being inserted into our environments and us being subject to that. So without the proper vetting policy, we won't know what good genetic species are versus bad. And there's plenty more coming. So here we are, when I'm about ready to leave the FDA meeting, I asked them, I said, what concerns you most about this entire process? And they said, oh, politics could get involved, an outbreak could happen, politics get involved and could force this out with a finding of no significant impact. 10 months later, in February, that's exactly what happened, and we had a finding of no significant impact in March of this year.
Thank you, Barry. All right, so what we're going to try to do, since nobody here is running for office, and we could go on for an hour, but we don't have an hour. We're actually way past time. I want to give you each a minute to close, but I'll do the pro side, then the anti side, and then the pro side and the anti side. So I don't know how we can be it's the best I got. That's great. So you guys start for a minute, then you guys can respond for a minute, then they can respond to you, then you can close. And that's it. So go ahead, Phil.
Mosquito control here is transformed. Traditionally, historically, we controlled nuisance mosquitoes, but as the last 8-9 years, it's gone more and more to the public health side, controlling mosquitoes that carry diseases. And unfortunately, they're increasing. When you look at the Caribbean and the Americas, the number of these mosquitoes are increasing. South Florida is one of the hot spots in this country that would be susceptible to this. And right now, mosquito control doesn't have really any good tools to combat these Aedes aegypti and the Aedes albopictus mosquitoes. Our tools for the nuisance mosquito just do not work as well, so we need new tools. This Oxitec tool is one of the tools. There's some others out there right now that we're looking at as well, but it's one that we really need to look at.
All right, now you guys. You got a minute. Either Barry or you guys got your own microphone.
Oh, wow. I'm free. Okay, when we talk about tools, we have a tool. We have Wolbachia. We just got a 337-acre permit from the EPA without any political interdiction into the scientific process. Not only do we have the Aedes aegypti version of that, but very shortly there'll be a full commercial permit for the albopictus version of that. Well, what Wolbachia does is it creates what we call cytoplasmic incompatibility, a sterile insect technique, exactly what you're looking at with genetically modified mosquitoes, except for without all the loose ends. 100% of the offspring die. There is no risk to humans in this, and we have this permit. We have a clean, natural solution that works to the ideals of what genetically modified want to work to. This science is not ready. That's the problem. You have a for-profit company trying to sell you something before it's ready for market, and we object. Protect what you love. Vote no, November 8th.
Yes.
All right, a minute for the pro side.
Thank you. Yes, Wolbachia is a new technology that's been developed. It's very new in Aedes aegypti, hasn't been tried before. What we would like is for people to ask the same questions of Wolbachia as they've asked from us. What if you release females? Well, if you release any females with Wolbachia technology, it doesn't work. You spread the females, they replace the population instead of actually controlling it. What if there's any horizontal gene transfer? That's been proven to happen with Wolbachia. What if Wolbachia gets into other insect species in this pristine Key West environment? It can affect them badly because it's known to cause this cytoplasmic incompatibility. How does cytoplasmic incompatibility work? They don't know. They have no idea. When you put Wolbachia into another organism, it's not naturally in Aedes aegypti. You introduce thousands of unknown genes into that particular mosquito. So all we ask is that you apply the same logic and the same questions to different technologies as and when you're using them. There is no environmental assessment for Wolbachia that's been done.
Thank you, Joe. All right, Ed, bring it home.
Well, this is the moment of truth, isn't it? It's the time that everybody has to stand tall. I just want to remind you that the people of Key Haven are counting on you to protect them. One of the questions was just asked about what are the standards of reliefs, and you heard a few things. Obviously, Dr. Nimmo is not ready for it. He's still not ready for it. We asked this question in 2012. The city of Key West asked this question in 2012. We want to know the release protocols. How much wind, the proximity to churches, schools, hospitals. We want to know. Those are the things we wanted. They've never been able to answer it, not even till today. So we're looking at things like Wolbachia, and that's true, that's right, it's not in there. I just want you to know it is not in there. And that's what you get from these people. It's everything is in the EA, but we need something better than the EA. Okay, so when it comes down to it, there has been no clinical analysis, which means that it's not been tested on humans. There have not been any biological analysis, has been tested on animals. As Last Stand has come out today in support of this, opposition to this, it's important that you get out and you all vote no. They're not ready.
Thank you.
There's different, better ways of doing it. Thank you, Todd.
We want to thank you guys. We really appreciate it. We hope it let a little bit of insight in here, and it was less than perfect, but we did the best we could. So if we could get the U.S. Congress candidates to run up here, we'll get right to that.
They're on the box over there. I give
While these guys are getting settled in, there's a film directly it's going to end up being directly after this. It was supposed to be a half hour after this, called Facing the Surge. I believe it has to do with climate change. So, and it's free. And I believe the bar is still open. Where, got Jose? I don't usually do this, but if anybody was going to get a red wine and wanted to bring it up here and put it on the stand, I would really love it. All right, come on, guys. All right, Jose, introduce yourself quickly.
Hello, I'm Jose Peixoto, the real Republican who ran for the District 26 Congress as an NPA. November, vote Jose Peixoto.
Carlos.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks to the panelists. Thank you all for being here, and a great thanks to Hometown for bringing us together so that we can have this wonderful conversation. I said 2 years ago that I would work with anyone and do whatever I could to help this community, to strengthen our country. That's what I've done in Washington for 2 years. I look forward to this discussion.
Joe.
Thank you, Todd. Thank Hometown PAC for having us. This is wonderful, right? We do these things during a campaign season. No place gets more people of their own volition. We did our old high school, and the kids were forced to come, so it was different. I don't know why you do it, but I love the fact that you do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right, we're going to get right to it. Nadja is going to lead us off.
Okay, this is a question for each of you. We recently saw a tragic Cuban raptor mass drowning event in the Keys. Did the wet foot, dry foot policy lead those people to their deaths? And do you think the policy might be changed?
And before you get going, and I hate to do on such an important topic, we got to go 1 minute so we can get as many questions as we can. So Nadja, who did you want to start?
We can start right now.
Jose? Okay.
I believe in 100% that law should be out of the way. We incentive people to get into the ocean. The sharks, the bad weather, the streams here, Why we want to do this if you are a compassion country? If you want to give them a green card, if you want to give them a citizenship, give it to them there. Why you incentive them to come over here and risk themselves? We see here years ago, a mother bring her 9-year-old son. She died and the kid survived. It's stupid, but it's not them. They have no choices. They're starving over there. The stupid as the laws we have here. They should be gone long time.
Thank you, Jose. Carlos.
Thank you very much. Obviously, this is a policy that's broken. In the last about year and a half, almost 100,000 Cubans have come to the United States, and a lot of them have risked their lives, have taken on very dangerous journeys through jungles, and of course, we all know that many still come by sea, and it was very sad to see what had happened. I have been asking the administration to address this issue because the wet foot, dry foot is an executive order. And they have the power to modify that law, that order at any time. The administration has decided to remain silent and say that they will not change this policy at all. What I have done is taken the first step, and it's a modest step, but I think it's an important step to stop the abuse of our policy.
10 seconds.
There are Cubans who come to the United States, qualify for refugee benefits, and then return to live in Cuba while they receive taxpayer assistance from the United States. That's wrong. So that's the first step, I think, in reforming this policy.
Joe.
Look, this is a place where Carlos and I have deep disagreements. U.S.-Cuba policy was not working. 50 years of failure. And so we have to address it, not keep yourselves out of it. No one has been more critical, more nasty with the President of the United States on the new policy. The idea is to engage. No part of the United States is going to benefit more with a long-term relationship with Cuba than the Florida Keys. And yet we have a congressman who refuses to engage. And what we have to do is engage. Yes, we have to look at wet foot, dry foot. We have to look at the Cuban Adjustment Act. We have to look at migratory policy. We have to look at commercial policy, trade policy, all these things. But this requires engagement. The president began a policy that I think is good and is working, and we have to continue along that line.
I got a feeling we're going to do this a lot, but Carlos, 30 seconds to respond.
What you heard, and maybe he says it in Miami, but not here, is that he supports the current migration policy. He does not support any changes, even the modest change that I have proposed to stop the abuse of American taxpayer dollars. He says no. Actually, on Bill Becker's show, he said, no, we need to keep giving them this money because they're going to spend it here in our community. Well, in that case, you can look it up, he said it. In that case, let's put everyone on welfare benefits, because then they'll spend the money here in our community. This policy is broken, and it needs to be changed.
Joe, that's not what I said. What I was talking about is the fact that if they don't get assistance, guess who pays for it? You all do. As opposed to coming from the federal coffers and they show up to your hospital, guess who pays for it? The community. This was money that was set up in the 1980s precisely to deal with what we've been dealing with for over half a century, which is unexpected, unplanned for migration. That's what the funds were set for. But if you want to change policy, let's engage in the full policy, and Cuba policy is broken.
Thank you, Joe. Larry, on to question number 2.
And we can start with, well, this is mainly at Joe and Carlos, but Jose, feel free to weigh in. The Affordable Care Act, like other Republicans, Congressman, you said you want to repeal and replace it, but nobody has ever put forward any kind of detailed plan. At the same time, Joe, the costs for the ACA are going up. Workers being affected. So I guess I would ask each of you to address it, and then Jose, you can weigh in on that.
Start with Carlos.
Carlos, so what would you replace the ACA with?
So this is a deeply flawed law, and I think most people have discovered that by now. Now, the politicians love to use the soundbite. We have provided insurance to X million Americans. But what they don't tell you is that a lot of these Americans still don't have access to quality health care. Why? Because they're on these high deductible plans. So it gives him the opportunity to go out and talk about this. But when they actually have to go and get treatment because they're sick, then they can't pay. And what happens? These people end up in the emergency room, just like they always have. Now, the big problem with the Affordable Care Act is that it was written by hospitals, by healthcare insurance companies, and by pharmaceutical companies. And it's designed to protect their interests. We need a law that's patient-centered. For example, we need a law where healthcare providers have to disclose the true cost of services. Under the ACA, they were able to keep that confidential. Go to a hospital and ask them how much something costs, and they'll tell you it depends. That is the problem with our healthcare system.
Joe, did you want Larry's the exact same question, or did you want to modify it for Joe?
No, for Joe was the question. We do see costs are going up, and that wasn't part of the deal.
You're absolutely right. By the way, part of the reason they're going up is because the state of Florida and Governor Rick Scott got rid of the regulatory oversight that they had, precisely to do this. Listen, no part of this district had more people without health care. Now, Carlos talks about them going to the hospital room, but now they have catastrophic care coverage. So while you're going to get a big bill, some of that is now being covered. Why you see the difference that's happening in a lot of hospitals. Our public hospitals going bankrupt, suddenly it's making money. It's in the money because more people have health care. But let's be clear. Carlos has been in Congress 2 years. Paul Ryan has been talking about what they're going to replace it with. And what they want you to go back to is a system where being a woman is a pre-existing condition. They want you to go back into a system where if you have a disease, you can't get health care. That's just wrong. And what we need is a healthcare policy that works. We need to fix it. Look, when they started with Medicare in the 60s, it was horrible at the beginning. We worked it through, and today is an essential element of people living in our country, and it makes a difference. What you don't do is leave it alone.
You did call up Carlos, but I want to let Jose do his thing in case he calls you out too.
I'm going to make sure I'm not going to do it. Listen, we have a governor of Minnesota a few days ago just come out. He's a Democrat. He's 100% from Obamacare. He blew that out. He say that system is corrupt, it's bad, it's no good at all. And you hear the husband of our candidate for president, the liar Hillary, say the same thing else. The Obamacare is disaster.
Carlos.
It's a shame. I mean, look, I'm the father of two little girls, ages 6 and 4. I'm married, and he uses this cheap rhetoric about being against women and about wanting to hurt women. No, absolutely not. There's some good goals in the ACA, and I've recognized this over and over again. We do need to create special risk pools for people with pre-existing conditions. We should treat women fairly, and that should be a part of a replacement. But the fact is that this was a law that was written for health insurance companies and pharmaceuticals and hospitals, and that's why it's failing.
Listen, I'm on
15 seconds because we've got to at least get through one.
I got it, but we get to answer it, Todd. And the reality is, look, I'm on Obamacare. I know its limitations. There's serious limitations. But you have to step up and fix them. You don't say no. 9 times he's voted to roll back and repeal Obamacare. That would leave 20 million people without health care. That would leave everyone with a pre-existing condition because they haven't got a replacement.
Thank you, Joe. Okay.
This question is primarily for Carlos, but the other two can answer if you'd like. I'm curious to know who you're voting for president.
I've addressed this many times. And look, like 2/3 of Americans, I think that we deserve much better. 2/3 of Americans don't trust, don't like either of the main 2 candidates for president. And I'm one of those. And I've spoken out from day one on people who have run campaigns to divide our country. Look, I know how painful the divisions in this country are. It's evident in the Congress, and it's evident everywhere. So what I said a long time ago is that I don't feel comfortable supporting either of these 2 candidates. And you know what? Neither of these 2 candidates deserve someone who's going to be a lapdog for them or a cheerleader for them. These are people who need to be held accountable. And my commitment to my community, to my district, from Key West to Westchester, is that no matter who gets elected president, I'm going to hold them accountable. No matter who gets elected president, I'm going to stand up to them. No matter who gets elected president, I'll be willing to work with them, because that is the role of the Congress. Not to be a cheerleader or a lapdog for anyone.
Thanks, Carlos. Let's have Jose, because I got a feeling I know where he's going to go.
Jose! For sure, I'm not going to say their names. Listen, here is the two choices we have. If you take one, that's your choice. But if you take the other one, you forget this one here. Next year, we're going to have to appoint a judge for the Supreme Court. You know, if Hillary is there, we're going to be a liberal judge. You know, if Donald Trump is there, we're going to have somebody else who's going to stand for us conservative people. That's the way I'm thinking. It's as simple as that. It's a choice of change our country. We only have two. They are not my best ones. But you have the two bad ones, take the best one. And the best one, I think, is the Republican one. It's the one going to choose a very, very strong judge for the Supreme Court. That's my main concern.
Thank you, Jose. Joe.
Look, we have one clear choice for President of the United States. It's Hillary Rodham Clinton. And this is the most qualified person that has ever run for this position, certainly in my lifetime. And while you may not agree with her, she's within the norm of American politics and has stood in the center of the arena for more than 3 decades. This is what I believe, and that's who I'm going to vote for. Remember, in Congress, you do one thing, is vote. You put your name on the board and you vote. I'm telling you who I'm voting for.
Dan.
This question is for both Joe and Carlos.
Of course it is. It's okay.
If you return to Congress, how are you going to get anything done for your district after such an extraordinarily divisive, nasty election, especially if Congress is divided?
Joe, why don't you start this one?
Look, it's horrible, right? The divisions that are in our country, we're seeing it in these polls every night that come out when you look at what's happening. But here's what's clear. When I was in Congress, we worked together with Democrats and Republicans to bring a change. That's why we were able to bring hundreds of millions of dollars to Keys restoration, millions of dollars of water purification projects to the Florida Keys and its projects. That's why we worked on the flood insurance issue. When everybody thought it was down and it was not going to go forward, working with Republicans and Democrats, we brought it forward. And we helped save what was an impossible situation. Now, no one says this is easy. This isn't an easy job, and it isn't an easy time. But we've got to engage, and we've got to work with people on the other side. It's something I've done my entire career, whether it's serving under a Republican governor or a Democrat, to try to make a difference for our country. And the reality, it's not easy, but you have to engage, you have to work at it, and I don't have any illusions that we can make it work.
Thank you, Joe. Carlos, hey, Mark, could you come over here for a second? I just want to get see if I can get a time extension for us. So go ahead, Carlos.
I don't have to tell you what I do, because I can just point to what I've done. Every single day in Congress, I've worked with Republicans and Democrats to get things done. The Miami Herald documented last week that I passed 7 bills that have become law, signed into law by the president. How do you do that? You sit down with everyone and you work with them. How do you do that? You earn people's respect. My predecessor didn't do that. My predecessor went to the House floor one day, that sacred chamber of democracy, and called people who disagreed with him the Taliban. Look it up, just Google it, it happened. How can someone with that attitude, that speaks in that way, bring the country together? But my predecessor doesn't only lack the respect of those who disagree with him, but also people in his own party. That's why when the leadership of his own party had a choice to make, they didn't support him in the primary. They supported Annette Taddeo, who's sitting in this room. Why? Because they know him. And someone with his track record cannot work with Republicans and Democrats to get things done in Washington.
Joe, I assume you're going to...
Yeah. Look, you all know me. You all know that I work with Democrats and Republicans, whether it's your Republican mayor in Key West or whether it's Republican members in the legislature, to make things happen. What I always do is stand up. You know where I am, you know what I'm working for, and you know I work for the people in the Florida Keys. And it's not about what I might do, it's what I did do. which was make a difference, right? For the first time, open an office in the Florida Keys with a permanent person. 3 satellite offices in the Florida Keys. When we were doing a management plan for Florida Bay, we made sure it worked for everyone. And that's what I will do, which is what I've done. Work with the people of the Florida and make a difference.
Thank you, Joe. Nadja, before Nadja goes, obviously we've blown past every time that we've ever had. The studios said we can go to 10 after 8. I mean, this is really good. So we're going to keep going. So, Nadja.
All right. Let's see. This year, we're hearing about how upset Native Americans are over various federal government decisions. There's the Dakota Access Pipeline. There's plans to turn federal lands held sacred by Indian tribes in Arizona and Utah over to state governments. Does or will the American Indian tribal leaders have your ear?
Who do you, Carlos, go first.
I'm glad you asked that question because on the Committee on Education and the Workforce on which I serve, we actually have jurisdiction or oversight over Native American schools in reservations. And these are schools that have been falling apart for years. And the federal government has really let down those communities. And we passed out of the Committee on Education and the Workforce legislation that would empower tribes to help rebuild those schools. We know that a lot of tribes are struggling with their young people, to educate them, to prepare them for whatever businesses or industries those tribes are involved with. And yes, I mean, I think it's critically important, especially when we analyze the history of this issue, that we do right by these tribal leaders. And there's no better place to start, in my opinion, than in education.
Thanks, Carlos. Joe, same question.
Look, I've got a history of working with them. When I was in the Department of Energy in the Office of Economic Impact, we looked over that, and I was also the head of the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Energy, so we worked on these issues, trying to help these schools move forward at the university level, the traditional tribal serving colleges. But let me be also clear that one of the things we did when we were in Washington is work with local tribes to make sure that all the projects that we were moving forward, we could coordinate with them to make sure that they were part of our decision-making process, because we do have local tribes here, in particular the Miccosukee, which are an essential element to Everglades restoration. They are between us and the water to the north, and then the part to the south. And so I've worked with them. But throughout my history, when you look at my record of working with minority communities, you know, whether it's the NAACP, where I have a 100% voting record, I reach out, I make a difference, and I work towards diversity. That's why I ran the diversity office in the Department of Energy.
Jose, you got a quick answer?
Yes, I think, especially when we talk about the education here and the tribals we have in Florida, we should be moved that way from the federal government to let the states and the local governments to help them to take care, because when we involve the federal government, we know how the Congress work right now. Nothing got done over there. I think if we move that to the states and the local, maybe they'll be done faster and quickly for those guys.
Thanks, Jose. Larry.
This is just for Jose, give you guys a break. Due respect to anybody who puts themselves out there for public office, but you've run for this seat before, you've also run for mosquito control. When you see the machines you're up against, why do you make the effort? Why would you put the strain on yourself like that?
Abraham Lincoln tried 15 times before he was elected for official. Because the day one, he say, I want to free the slaves. And
Sloan,
people
you
say,
still have a chance.
people, you're crazy. You're never going to be able to do that. And he turns out to be one of the best presidents we ever have. I'm a very worried about citizen. And I see the way our countries go. I see the way the Congress is going. And I think somebody else has to change. We have to change those guys to be there no longer than 8 years. You see some of the guys up there, oh, I'm so proud, I'm here for 45 years. You should be home a long time, take care of your grandchildren. We don't need you to be there. And I remember 1985 when I moved to the United States, we approved the best immigration law was ever done. It was signed by Ronald Reagan and done by Chip O'Neill, Democrat and Republican, two extremist guys. And a few weeks later, Ronald Reagan bombed Muammar Gaddafi. I remember reading the newspaper the next day, Chip O'Neill was 100% back him up. We should have that, and we lose that complete. That's why I'm trying to get that. If I go there one day, my first thing to try is time limit, 4 years maximum.
That was a great answer, Jose. Okay.
This is for all of you. I'm curious how you would address the situation in Syria currently. The current administration has made it very clear that they do not want to send additional troops in, and yet we see the results of that decision every day on the news. What would your decision be if it comes down to additional military assistance in that area?
Joe.
Look, I have to tell you, it's horrific. It's a tragedy, but I don't think there should be American troops on the ground there. I think one of the wisest things the president has done is to begin to disengage from that part of the world. We have Israel there. We have to protect it. It's an ally, and we will. But the idea that we're going there was because what they had under their feet. And the last 8 years of this administration has expanded our production capacity, or expanded our renewable energies portfolio, and we are more self-sufficient. Do we have to then use our power of diplomacy, use our pressure with allies, and yes, sometimes use our firepower? But I don't think young men and women should be walking around trying to figure out who the good guys are, because I just don't think there are any good guys there to find. And I don't think there's a clear role for America to play. It's sort of this idea that we can be the policeman of the world, and that we can nation create, and I don't think we can.
Carlos.
Well, there are good people in the Middle East, and we need to work with them, and we need to build alliances with them. And to hear someone say that we should disengage from a region where terrorist activity is taking place every day is very dangerous. If we disengage from the region, terrorism will show up at our doorstep again. We just have to engage in a smart way. And let me tell you, to answer your question directly, what's happened in Syria is one of the greatest blemishes in human history. Over 500,000 people dead, over 11 million people displaced. One of the low points in American foreign policy was in 2013, when the president said that if Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons against innocent people, that would be a red line and he would act, and he didn't. Now, that doesn't mean we have to invade countries, but there have to be consequences. In the year 2016, leaders recognized by the UN cannot gas children to death. When my predecessor was in Congress, he didn't say a word about that. I was running, it was an unpopular position, but I said, we must act.
Time. Let Jose, and then you get to respond, Joe.
We have 5,000 American soldiers on the ground today in Iraq, helping the Iraqis to push ISIS out of there. I think you guys don't read and don't listen to the news, but they are there today. The 5,000 Americans are behind the troops there today. Barack Obama sent them. I'm sorry about those guys. I think we have to keep our eyes in the Middle East and do whatever we can, military, intelligence, or whatever, but we have to push those terrorists out of there before they got in their door here.
Thanks, Jose. Joe, responding to Carlos.
Yeah. Look, I was in Congress, and I did see that plan, and it was not workable. And so what I know is you don't bomb chemical weapon sites because you just killed more people. What is clear is that the United States has vital interests in the area, and we act to protect those interests. But the idea that we're going to send young men and women into harm's way with no clear goal, with no clear purpose, except to some jingoistic idea that maybe we can solve problems that are millennia old. Look, when I sat on the border with Israeli officers and looked into Syria.
Joe, that's 30 seconds. What's your thought?
Even they said, you don't go in there. This is right next to Israel. Israel doesn't want to touch it. And what we have to do is continue to work from outside, try to develop leadership from there, but not put our young men and women
Thanks,
at
risk. Joe. I'm lost. Where are we? Who's up?
Dan.
Local governments in South Florida are addressing climate change because they're on the front lines. What, if anything, should Congress be doing to help them, and how will you make that happen?
Start with Carlos.
Well, thank you. This is an issue where, again, I have shown my willingness to bring Republicans and Democrats together to the table. Together with my Democratic colleague, Ted Deutsch from Florida, we started the first ever bipartisan Climate Solutions Caucus, where Republicans and Democrats meet to discuss this issue and to find solutions. And we recently filed our first legislation together, legislation to create a Climate Solutions Commission, because this is a critical issue. And here in South Florida, we're at the tip of the spear. And like any major issue in Congress, if it's going to get addressed, if it's going to get solved, Republicans and Democrats have to work together. And again, that's a major difference between my predecessor and I. That's why I have a record of success. 7 bills passed, amendments passed. He had 1 bill signed into law when he was a member of Congress representing this district, and that was to name a post office.
5 seconds.
We need more than that. And if we're going to solve this climate issue, we need people who are going to go to Washington to work together and to find solutions.
Joe, you get to answer and respond.
Look, it's fascinating to listen to someone who got elected as a right-wing Republican, and then his St. Paul Epiphany moment was when the court redrew the district, and now he wants to be a moderate. Look, first of all, Paul Ryan and Boehner doesn't allow the redrawing, allow bills to get out for freshmen, because they're going to challenge, right? It's what happens. And so let me tell you what he has done on the environment, right? He's voted against every one of the president's EPA regulations. He's voted to make toxic ash non-regulatable by the EPA, right? Think about this. There are over 70 toxic waste ash facilities in Florida. He thought that was okay to get the government out of regulating that. Look, the reality is you have one candidate who stood on the side of the environment. That's why I have high marks with the League of Conservation Voters, and he has low marks. That's why the Sierra Club, the oldest and most prestigious environmental group in the country, endorsed our candidacy.
Wait, Jose, quickly, and then Carlos.
Definitely, yes, I have to say something else about this. We have, in the beginning here, you asked me about running against those big guys in the money-wise. Listen, most of the money, the both of them, comes from the sugarcane lords. The sugarcane lords are the guys over there dumping tons of chemicals in our canals and the lakes every single day. And I'm telling you, I can see the money. Both our candidates here, they have a lot of more money from those guys.
Carlos? 30 seconds to respond.
All he did was make excuses for his lack of a record in Congress. Of course freshman Democrats pass bills. You know how I know that? Because I've passed bills with them, and I work with them. And that is what we need. Someone who can go to Washington and get things done. Whether it's transportation, education, the environment. He criticizes my record on the environment. He couldn't get the Central Everglades Planning Project into the Water Resources Development Act. That's a $2 billion investment in increasing that fresh water flow into Florida Bay. That is a record of accomplishment. That is what we need in Congress, not people who go to get post offices named.
The accomplishment, no, I get to respond to
You get 15 seconds, and because it is our forum, you get 15 seconds.
Yeah, but it's our state, and it's important that these things, $200 million we got for Everglades restoration. That's no just talking about it, that's getting it done. And the reality is we made a difference in Congress because you all felt it here. We were there working on each one of these issues in a Congress that is, he's in the leadership, worked against every environmental
issue.
Thank you, Joe.
Since you wanted to speak, we're going to do our wrap-ups. I'll do like we did with Mosquito, with the last Mosquito thing. You each get a minute, and then you get another minute. And that will bring us right to 8:10, and we're done. So Joe, start with Joe, Carlos, Jose, and then Joe, Carlos, Jose. That way you can, because you're going to want to respond anyway. So you get a minute, and the next guy gets a minute, next guy gets a minute, we'll go right down. That will bring us right to our end. And then we'll get everybody out of here.
Let's be clear on every issue that's important to us. Whether it's a woman's right to choose, whether it's healthcare, whether it's immigration, whether it's the environment. These are all issues that are important to this community, and each one of those was a leader and made a difference. And I'm running against someone who doesn't believe in those rights, right? This is someone who's in the leadership, voted to make women wait 48 hours after they were raped to get an abortion. That's just wrong. This is someone who does not believe in a woman's right to choose. That's wrong. And in this community, for the values we have, when we talk about the environment, when we talk about gun control, suddenly he believes in gun control. Do you know what the bill he filed is? It gives a 14-day waiting period for people who are on the terrorist watch list to be turned down by a federal judge. From buying an AK-47. Listen, when I'm in Congress, if you're on the terrorist watch list, you don't get to buy any gun, not just an assault
Time,
weapon.
Joe. Okay. Carlos.
Number one, he doesn't understand the bill. Number two, when he was in Congress, he filed 0 bills on gun safety. I have the only bipartisan piece of legislation that will actually make a difference. Look, people in this district know our records. And you know what the proof is? He ran here. He says he's from here because he got an efficiency here, and then when he lost, he left for a year. But he says he lives here. Democrats in the Florida Keys voted against him in the primary. Again, they voted for Ms. Tadeo, who's in the audience tonight. Why? Because they know his record. That's why they voted him out. Because they also know that he ran one of the most corrupt campaigns in the history of this community. People went to jail because of him. Look it up. If you don't believe me, just Google it. People went to jail because of Mr. Garcia. With that reputation, it is very difficult to get anything done for your community in Congress. That's why the leadership of his party went against him and supported Ms. Tadeo. My record is one of working with Republicans and Democrats. That's what this district deserves.
Jose.
Anybody else talk about touching their Second Amendment are no good for us. You want to lose the privilege to have your guns? There's the 2 guys here you're voting for because they try to change our Second Amendment. I don't want to do that. I think it's the best thing I have. Nobody else going to walk in that door now with an AK-47 and try to shoot us because they don't know what we have inside here because the privilege we have for the Second Amendment. I don't want nobody else to touch on that. In November, it's a very important, it's very crucial for us. We vote for the candidates who are going to appoint a judge for the Supreme Court. We don't need a liberal judge there, please.
Joe, 1 minute. This is the last 1 minute. Barring any...
Todd, thank you. Thank you for all of you for helping, and thank you for staying this late. Look, this is tremendously important. It's a monumental election that is going to make a difference not only in our lives, but our children and the children to come. And I ask you to vote for someone who's shown a willingness to listen, who's brought issues of importance to the United States Congress, who stood up for this community time and again to make a difference. And I ask you, when you go into that voting booth on November 8th, do you want someone who can work with the next administration to continue to give you a voice in the halls of Congress, or someone who's out in the wilderness trying to figure out who he's for? Thank you.
Carlos.
$2 billion for the Central Everglades planning projects, something that is going to increase freshwater flow into Florida Bay by 15%. $3 million to help the Florida Keys improve its sewer systems. Transportation, pedestrian safety, water infrastructure, education, a bill that I worked with Democrats. The president invited me to the White House for the signing ceremony for what? To return power to states and local districts so that these decisions could be made here to help English language learners. Miami-Dade and Monroe counties have many English language learners in our schools and to help their teachers. That's my record. I'm one of the most productive freshmen in the Congress, and I've done it by working with Republicans and Democrats. And that's what this district deserves, not someone who talks about bipartisanship
10 seconds.
and then goes to the House floor and calls the other side the Taliban. Someone who actually works with other people in good faith and with respect.
Jose, you get the last word.
Thank you very much, Hometown PAC, for this wonderful event you guys put up every election year. Thank you, the moderator. Thank you, the press here. Thank you all to coming. God bless you all. God bless America. And November 8th, Jose Peixoto for Congress and Donald J. Trump for the President of the United States.
I said you got the last word. So thank you, everyone. 8:08, right on time.